Well, it's time for another edition of Mullins Music and Memories with yours truly, your host, Mark Lee. Looking forward to another great conversation with amazing folks and some amazing folks that I've had the pleasure of meeting and all of that. So we're definitely going to have a fun conversation and a conversation with a lot of truly amazing people and some folks that I am glad to call new friends and all of that. So looking forward to some amazing conversations here on Mullins Music and Memories. There's been a lot of things going on this past week. As a matter of fact, I just finished doing the technician work or kind of the vaccines engineering and some of the producing for the amazing Black Business Olympics, which is done by the Black Business Expo. And one of those guests actually decided that they would come in and share a little bit about what they've got going on in their world with me. And I also saw that a longtime friend of mine, Miss Maya, I've known her since she was a young child, as I've known her mom as well, is here with us also. And she is in that whole pageant community. So it ought to be interesting having a conversation with her about pageants and how that whole thing is going, because I think she's competing for Miss North Carolina, if I remember correctly. But we'll find out more about that as I bring in the various guests and we share the conversation with these amazing folks. And like I said, definitely have had the pleasure of meeting some truly amazing people. I know I just stepped outside. The weather is pretty decent here, even though it is hot. And I just recently found out that I will be emceeing a live event. So there will be a live event going on even in the middle of the pandemic, because I was finding out that the festival at the Eno will be doing a hybrid kind of combination of both some virtual parts of it, which I think is one day at the Hayti Heritage Center, and some of it there will be live and in person, but with a limited audience, if you can call 7,000 people spread out over a state park a limited amount. But they will definitely have a limited amount, and I think that was the figure I heard. It'll definitely be less than they usually have, because they can sometimes hit anywhere from 15 to 20 or even more than that. So it'll definitely be more spread out, and they are trying to take various precautions to make sure that folks are protected even during that event and all of that. But right now, I'm going to bring in Miss Dougherty and see what she thought about this amazing event that we just did and everything, which was the Black Business Olympics that Eric Kelly was involved in, and definitely had you as one of the speakers. And I know that you're a motivational person and definitely gives a lot of positive messages. So if you can share with our audience here on Pod TV, formerly IBM TV, a little bit about your own background, I'm sure that folks would love to hear about it.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. Definitely appreciate being here today. Let me tell you, the experience was absolutely wonderful yesterday. But first, my name is Nikki Doherty. I am a United States Army combat veteran. I served in Iraq in 2003. And with that being said, I'm actually the CEO and founder of Faith, Hope, Love for Veterans here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we help our fellow veterans who are on the street or just in need with, the necessities that they need on a daily. We're actually in the process of creating a sustainable housing solution for them, because our goal and our vision is to decrease homelessness amongst the veterans and eventually end it. So by the end of this year, we definitely want to break ground on that initiative to have sustainable housing for our veterans. But as you did say, Mr. Lee, I am known as a motivational mindset superwoman. I definitely help women overcome barriers and challenges that they may be experiencing, whether in business or wanting to start business, help them overcome those hurdles of being frustrated, stuck, and unfulfilled and overwhelmed, really find their place and help them to walk out their power and their purpose. But yesterday was definitely amazing with the wonderful speakers all week at the Black Business Olympics hosted by the Black Business Expo. Just amazing people, amazing Black businesses doing wonderful things in the community. You name it, they were there, and I learned so much, and really grateful and honored to be able to speak at that event yesterday.
No, it was a great event. Your speech was very great, and it was an amazing event. And I definitely thought that you gave a powerful message. And I definitely know about your work with the veterans. And actually, a good friend of mine, Captain Newborn, he did an event for several years that was the Road to the Apollo, and that was done by his organization, which was trying to remember the name of his veterans organization, Next Level Veterans, I believe it is, or something like that. But they took a lot of people up to the Apollo and raised money. And I know he was oftentimes talking about the amount of veterans that are still, as you said, homeless, and this was even before the pandemic, and still facing a lot of issues. And he was not too pleased with even the way that the Veterans Administration has been treating a number of you veterans as well. I know that I did the primary hosting, but then about the midway point, he would come on and give a lot of statistics, and some of those statistics were very heart wrenching in terms of the way that you veterans have been treated, particularly those that had served in the Gulf War and a number of the other wars as well. So I'd love to hear maybe some of your thoughts about that, because like I said, I know that I did that event for several years, and it was just amazing hearing folks talk about what was going on, and the fact that y'all were not getting enough relief. And you even talked about the homeless population, and I know that he was interested in that as well.
Right. I definitely feel that the Veteran Administration is doing the best they can, but they are extremely overwhelmed. And with that being said, I even called for an appointment the other day. My eye was really bothering me. It was swollen, very fuzzy. And they said they had their next appointment was in September. Oh, no. And I'm like, wow. And the lady, she felt, really bad, but she's like, hey, we're just super overwhelmed. So I think there are more veterans in need than what can be helped at that time. So it takes people like me, just with the passion, really putting those boots on the ground to say, hey, I can start an organization to help this initiative. Now, starting the organization really wasn't that easy. Of course, I'm trying to get in the process of getting grant funding for my project. Of course, coming up against some red tape and, being told no a lot. But I can't let that discourage me, because I have to find a way, make a way to help my homeless veterans, even if that means raising the funds on my own. But we definitely need more people to have more boots on the ground to say, hey, I'm willing to take this charge, put this initiative on my back, and see to it that if I can just reach 50 veterans right now, I don't know the exact statistic, but the last time I was in a meeting with a couple of the Housing Authority and different organizations that are doing the work here in Charlotte, the number was in the 200s that we know of, that veterans are homeless. Now, once again, that's what we know of. But if I can help 50, someone else can help 50, we can definitely narrow down that number and decrease it, because that is the goal. So the VA is just super overwhelmed, and they're just not able to help everyone who's in need right now. And it is definitely heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching, especially when you see homeless veterans with the sign that says, hey, I served my country and I'm on the street. And it's like, I don't like seeing that at all. So I'm going to do whatever I have to do in Charlotte, North Carolina, to start there, to get the community involved and say, hey, we have to do something about those that have served our country, even out of the country, being on foreign land, putting our lives at danger and in risk, and really risking our lives. We have a saying that all gave some gave all to that war.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. And definitely, I know that the group is, by the way, called Next Level Veterans, and it is doing a lot of work around specializing in helping folks that had traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorders, suicide prevention, peer support, and military sexual trauma. Because I do know that all of those have been issues that have been faced by various veterans and everything. So definitely, they have been trying to work with folks that are dealing with these issues on a regular basis, and still continue to do that work, even though he has some other jobs as well. Ironically, his name is Captain Newborn, and I oftentimes tease him about it because he did not serve in the military. His dad did not serve in the military, and neither did his grandfather. So it's like a hereditary name that they got. Okay. And I think when I tease him about it, he says that it might have been somebody like 4 or 5 generations ago that was actually in the military and gave that name Captain, and just passed it down generation to generation, even though none of them have served. Because I oftentimes tease him about that. I'm like, wait a minute, did you serve in the military? And he's like, nope, that's a name that's a family name, not necessarily a military rank. And all of that.
Ask, what branch did he serve in? I know that's probably the first question that he gets.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the first question.
That's really great with small organizations like myself. we can become like a family. You can't really become a family with the VA because you see them maybe once a week for an hour or so, and you can't get that personable. I mean, you can, but still, there's so many people coming and going. So with organizations like Next Level Veteran and Faith, Hope, Love for Veterans, we're able to be a community to these veterans, because veterans with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, TBI, they need family, they need community support, and they need that on an ongoing basis, someone that they know that they can lean on. And that's what's really great about smaller organizations.
No, and definitely I want to bring in a couple of the other guests as well. So I actually think I'm going to bring in Matt at some point, but I also wanted to bring in Jesse, who's got some amazing things going on in his community. And he's actually, if I remember correctly, Jesse, weren't you involved in the military as well and everything? I'm trying to remember, but I can't remember. We've talked about so much, but it does seem to me that you had some military background. And then, of course, you definitely have the background of the being an entrepreneur and doing this amazing thing that is winning awards with your liquor and everything.
Indeed, Mark. Air Force veteran, yeah, and a DOD, a civilian. I'm a total about 12 years total. So I love the initiative that you have going on. Is it Nikki? I don't want to butcher your name. I apologize, but yeah. So I'm very interested. If you can send me some info, I would love to be involved the best I can with that organization. So.
Yeah, and Marc, tell a little bit about your business, because I know you got your business and everything, and I've got some other guests, but I'd love for folks to learn more about what you're doing with the liquor company and everything, but also some of these awards, because like I said, I saw that you had gotten some awards and things of that nature.
Oh, man, I don't know about the awards, Mark. I do have a couple of my business partners, teammates that are actually waiting in the lobby too, Brian Burton and Courtney Tucker. So I'm Jesse Carpenter's founder. Yeah, sure. That's Mr. Burton there, and that's Mr. Tucker. So we are the founders of Old Hillside Bourbon Company. We are based out of Durham. And we went to Hillside High School in Durham and decided to pay tribute by actually creating our brand around Hillside. So.
Cool. Definitely. It's an amazing brand. Definitely want y'all to share more about that and everything. And I did have one other person, because it's, like I said, it's a roundtable conversation. We'll talk about a lot of things going on. But I've also got Matt that's going to be joining us. And Matt is actually involved in the ticket world. I met him through Brian and everything. And he's got an amazing organization that actually, if you create, like if you always thought that you wanted to go somewhere and you didn't get to go there, like you wanted to go to the Super Bowl and all of that, his company will actually create those tickets that can almost make it seem like you were there at the Super Bowl, even though you weren't there at everything. So tell a little bit more about the company. I probably butchered the whole idea, but it's the whole idea of the time machine and the fact that, I wanted to be at Super Bowl, let's say 2018. I was nowhere near there, but you can set the whole kind of semblance of being there. So I'd like you to share a little bit about what your company is all about as well.
Yeah, appreciate that, Mark. You got the gist of it. We're a commemorative ticket company, and essentially we're keeping the printed memory alive. And so with everything going to digital, we're going to keep printing tickets and lanyards and credentials. We can customize and personalize them. We have augmented reality experiences coming, gamification coming. So it's really it's going to be a win-win-win. The fans are going to enhance the fan experience. We're going to generate revenue for teams and festivals and events, and then offer added value for brands and partners and sponsors. We don't have permission. A lot of this is going to be dedicated on sponsors and partnerships and some licensing. So when we're operating exactly how we want to operate, you will be able to get a ticket for a past event that you've been to. So there was some truth in what you said. We're hoping to have the ability for you to say, hey, I was at the Super Bowl 10 years ago, and I'd love to get a ticket for that. And depending on the interest and demand for a specific event, we might be able to actually recreate that ticket as of how it was. So we're working on partners and licensing and, being sponsors and going to conferences. But anyone who has an event that wants to help their fans commemorate it or earn some additional revenue, we can certainly help.
So how would that work with, like, say, a liquor company? Because Brian, Courtney, and Jesse have all got their new liquor. Well, it's a fairly new liquor company and everything. So how would that work with them if they wanted to create an event, or if they wanted to even do some branding of their liquor using your situation?
Yeah, we have. I think that our assets are great for experiential marketing activations. I mentioned we're going to do some augmented reality experience. So if you know the 19 Crimes wine, what they do, we'll have the ability to have that, but it'll be a credential, similar to this, where you can have rotating images on the front, and we'll have a trigger that will go to an AR video, and it'll bridge the digital and the physical world. So with brands and companies, activations, experiential marketing, a unique way to engage with the fans. That's the type of thing that we're looking to engage partnerships with.
Cool. And like I was asking, well, I know I asked Jesse, and Jesse's a veteran. I can't remember because it never came up in your conversation, Brian, whether you had military in your family. I know that I did not serve in the military, but my dad was in the Air Force. And of course, I've got cousins that were in the various aspects of the military and everything, including my cousin Emmett, who was an officer over there in the Middle East and everything, even during the time of the takedown of the dictators over there and all of that. So definitely he was involved and is now doing kind of that military civilian work. So it's like that civilian work, but still having those military credentials and all of that. So he's using that, and just recently came back from over in the Middle East and is now back in DC. But I think he may be heading back to the Middle East to do some of that civilian work in the not too distant future. So him and his brother are involved in different forms of either law enforcement or military, because I know his younger brother, my other cousin on that aunt's two kids, is a Georgia Bureau of Investigation officer and all of that. So definitely, I was just wondering if either you had any military experience, Matt, as well as Courtney and Brian. And then I do want to bring in my pageant lady as well, so she can share a little bit about what she's got going on with the pageant and what she's got happening in her world. But Matt, what about you? Did you have any military background?
I don't have any military background. I have some friends who are in the military. My grandfather was in the military. I actually have the flag that they gave us when he passed. But certainly love to thank everyone for their service. Living in the greatest country in the world, wouldn't rather be anywhere else. And, we don't need to wait for Memorial Day and July 4th to celebrate our freedoms and show our appreciation.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. What about you, Courtney and Brian? And if you want to share a little bit about your own background and even the connection to Jesse.
No, that's awesome, man. No, I don't have any military background. I have a bunch of cousins and family members who are all served in the military proudly. And again, I want to thank them for all their service and making this a great country that we live in. Just to give you a little background on us, man, we've known each other since elementary school, junior high school, up until high school. So that's how we connected, and we connected over the love of bourbon online. After all these years, over 25 years or so, I would say. I hadn't seen these guys in person in that long. So over the pandemic, we decided to link up and just start a bourbon company. And here we are a year later. June 1st marked a year of our company. And we have a bottle, we have a product. And that's just, hard work, determination, perseverance, the love for where we're from, Durham, North Carolina. And we just wanted to put a good quality product out there and have a household name, And I love these guys, and I'll let Brian go because I can talk forever about the product.
It's okay. It's okay. Yes, I had a grandfather, my father, and my brother all served. They prevented me from serving, so I only became a firefighter. So, not as prestigious, but I do thank the veterans for their sacrifice and their service. Big proponent of supporting those who are in the military. Actually, the 82nd Airborne is supporting our product at this moment on their own via their own message board. So. We're really big into the military and supporting those guys as they have supported us over the years.
Yeah, you say that you say firefighters are don't have the prestige. I would argue that in the pandemic, y'all definitely came up as having a lot of support as well as being, part of those first priority people and everything, whether that's the doctors, whether that's the firefighters, whether that's law enforcement or a number of others, and even some folks that we were not thinking in the past needed to get the kind of reputations that they deserve. So I definitely have to give a shout out to the food workers, including those folks that are working at things like DoorDash and Uber and Lyft and things of that nature, because that's how a lot of us got our food during this pandemic, and even how we got around and all of that. So, Nikki, Ms. Dougherty, if you could, I'm sure you've got some advice for these business owners, and I do want to bring in really quickly Maya as well, who has definitely got some strong Durham connections and is definitely doing some amazing things. And as you see, she's got her pageant sash on and all of that. And definitely, I know that she's a longtime Durham person, and I've known her since she was a youngster. And I don't know how many pageants you've been involved in, Maya. So if you want to, actually, I'll get to Nikki's advice, but if you want to share a little bit about your pageant history, I'm sure folks would love to hear that as well.
Cool. So yeah, my name is Maya Bryant, and born and raised in Durham, North Carolina. I went to Durham School of the Arts and then went and got my undergrad from William Peace University in Raleigh, so didn't go too far from home, and then earned my master's at Liberty University. And in exactly 8 days, that's what my countdown tells me, I will compete for Miss North Carolina 2021 in hopes of winning that title and going on to compete for Miss America, the 100th Miss America, this December. So yes, you're right. I've competed in so many pageants since the age of 9. And my first pageant was actually in Durham. There were family friends, and they wanted me to compete for Little Miss North Carolina Central University. And my mom said, absolutely not. She is not going to do that, because all we knew about pageants was the Joan Benet Ramseys of the world. That was not what my mom wanted me to be a part of. And the response back to her was, she's not going to win. We just need a warm body on stage. We just need another child. So my mom said, okay, sure. I loved being on stage. I won that pageant in 2001. And ever since then have loved being on stage, and then started competing in the Miss America organization, because a lot of people don't know it's the leading scholarship organization for young women in our country. So I've been very fortunate to have been a product of a single parent household, to have earned 2 degrees before the age of 22 because of those funds that were afforded me through the Miss America organization. So fun fact, if I am the lucky woman next week to be Miss North Carolina, I will be debt free.
Wow, that's amazing if you can become debt free and everything. And a lot of people don't know that about Miss America, that it's a scholarship organization. And you're so right about that. And a lot of times people think about the pageant moms and the negative aspects. So if you could share just a little bit about your experience with the pageant and what you enjoyed about it, because it definitely sounds like you have not had those same negative experiences that are the stereotypes that we always hear about.
You are absolutely right that many people, when they think about pageants, it is the crazy things that we see on TV. But the woman that I am today is largely because of my competition through the Miss America organization. I started competing actually in the Miss North Carolina organization as a teen. They do an outstanding teen program, which is a sister program to the Miss America organization. So at 15, I started competing and have been able to hone my public speaking skills. I now know what it means to go into a job interview and sell yourself, because what many people don't see on TV is before all of that happens on the TV and the glitz and glam, you are put into a 10-minute private interview with the judges, and you stand at a podium and they can ask you anything and you have to be ready. And so that has helped me with my public speaking skills, with being able to talk on stage in front of people and perform a talent and hone those skills. I sing for my talent. I'll be singing Donna Summer's Last Dance. And so to engage an audience for a song that's so classic is something that I have learned through this organization. And I've met some of my best friends. I know, Courtney, you were talking earlier about reconnecting with friends through the pandemic. Well, I've won this title in November of 2019, thinking that I would compete in June 2020. And we all know the old tale that happened, and that pageant didn't happen. And so many women have kept this title for a year and a half. And I've been able to connect with not only the women across our state who are competing, but the women across the country. So I have friends now in Virginia, in Texas, and South Carolina who are all competing this month as well, hoping to go to Miss America. So I'm crossing my fingers for my friends as well, and that we'll all be at Miss America in December. But it is definitely about the sisterhood. We have a crown that has 4 points, and they stand for scholarship, style, service, and success. And I always say, if I could add another one, it would be sisterhood, because there's nothing like women uplifting other women.
Maya, have you ever seen the show Insatiable on Netflix?
Yes.
It's a funny, crazy. I mean, how close to reality is that? I mean, obviously without the killing.
Right. Well, fun fact, pageant coach that I've actually worked with this year, Bill Iverson, it was kind of the inspiration behind that show on Netflix. So that was a cool connection I have to that. But it's not, I hate to let people down, but it's really not full of drama and craziness. There is, I do say pageants is another world for sure. Next week, my mom and I will travel to High Point, North Carolina, and we know we're stepping into another world. But it's just because we're all putting on pretty dresses to go stand on stage. We're not really going anywhere. So I think that's the part that's strange to people. But other than that, it is such an uplifting environment. And it's much, like a job. We're all a team. If one person looks bad, we all look bad. If one person doesn't sound smart, we all don't sound smart. And so we're all backstage lifting each other up to put on an amazing production. And I have a feeling that this pageant's going to be absolutely amazing because we've waited so long for it to finally happen. We went through postponements like everyone did with events last year. We were like, oh, we'll have it later in the summer. And then received the news that we weren't going to be able to have it at all. And Miss America was ultimately canceled too. So we're looking forward to having a show. We're ready to just do it.
Are you looking at having a limited audience? I know that I just got a call yesterday from the Eno, which is our big outside festival during the 4th of July weekend, and they're going to do one day virtual, but the other 2 days will be live and in person, but with a limited audience, similar to what the Durham Bulls, the baseball team, has done, as well as other minor league teams, and definitely similar to what our professional sports have done as well. I think that I heard a figure of like maybe 7,000 or something like that. But if you know the Eno, you know that that's probably about half of what our usual crowds are and all of that. So definitely they're planning to stretch it out and make sure people are vaccinated, or if not vaccinated, wearing masks. So how are y'all going to handle that with the pageant, or have they given y'all any tips on that?
Fun fact, most of the women who are competing for Miss North Carolina are fully vaccinated, so we love that. And so we obviously we have to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test before we're even allowed to enter the competition. And we're just making sure that everyone is staying safe. As far as the audience, there will be a limited audience. We have been able recently with the governor's orders to open up some more seating. So that is exciting, but you're right. It will be different in that aspect, that there will be a smaller audience. We are streaming the pageant as well. We're waiting for that streaming information, and that will be shared through all of our social media platforms, but we're going to stream the final night of pageants for people who won't be able to make it because of those limited seating capabilities.
And Ms. Dougherty, you've done some public speaking and everything. So what kind of advice would you give to Maya as she's doing this competition? And did you ever go that competition route? And I can't remember from meeting you during the Black Business Olympics whether you have kids or not, and if those kids have been involved in that pageant route also, because I do know that you're a military veteran like we talked about. But I was just wondering your own experience with public speaking and what advice you would give.
Definitely. So I do have a 14-year-old daughter. She never went the pageant route. She definitely could, definitely looks like a model, but she never really wanted to go that route as well. When I think about public speaking, it's all about just being confident. You know, I made several mistakes yesterday, but no one knew it because I just kept on going. I didn't even flinch. And it's just about being confident. It's about knowing what you want to speak on and just engaging the audience. And I think it's really about just being authentic, being your real self, because people connect to us. People connect to the individual, not only what you're saying, but also your individuality. And I heard that confidence is the new currency. If you're confident and you feel like you know what you're talking about, even if you really don't, confidence sells, you know, because no one really wants to, you know, speak to someone that's wishy-washy or unsure. But if you're up there and you're engaging with the audience and you're speaking confident, and see, you're confident within yourself, like, I got this. I did the work to get here. I got this. And you just give it your all, you go for it, and you be confident. And me, I like to smile. So I'm smiling, I'm confident, and I'm engaging the audience because I'm just a smiling person. But confidence is the key.
I love it as well. And I know one of the things you talk about on your speech, Ms. Dowdy, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, is the fact that you also had to make a drastic change in your life and everything. Because you talk about the fact of not just the changes with the military, but also making a major move with your teenage daughter and everything to North Carolina, and even how you faced some hardships when you made that move. Because I know you talked about it some in the speech, so I'm sure folks here would love to hear about that as well, because it didn't sound like it was an easy move, and you had gotten divorced and were a single parent, and we're definitely here with your teenage daughter and coming to a whole nother state. So like I said, as I recall, I believe you were in Ohio, if I remember correctly, or something like that, and then moved here to North Carolina. So that, like I said, from the Midwest to the Southeast or whatever, but it was definitely a different kind of environment. So I'm sure that our folks here in the studio with us, as well as the folks listening, would love to hear some more about that story as well.
Definitely. I know with all of us being entrepreneurs and pursuing our dreams and our goals, there have been times where the Lord has required a very hard thing for us to do. And I was volunteering with my pastor at my church in Ohio, and he decided to open up a location here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was working for the government. All my military time had rolled over. I was almost at 6 figures. Life was good. Daughter was in a great school. I was getting ready to purchase a home. And when my pastor decided to open up a church here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I knew that I would have to come down here and serve, because I love passionately serving at my church. But I thought I could transfer. I could come down here, look for a place to live, and do everything the right way. The Lord actually graced me to drive from from Ohio to Charlotte, North Carolina, every single Sunday for 3 months, to come down here and serve with the church. I would get dressed at 10 a.m. on Sunday, drive to Charlotte. I would serve at my church, get back in the car, drive all the way back home, and go to work for 3 months. And I remember just crying to the Lord after that third month, like, I can't do this anymore. So I heard in my spirit, well, it's time for you to quit. If you really believe my word, if you really believe everything that you're preaching, and if you really believe, on me, will you forsake it all and leave me? Will you give up the life that you prepared for yourself to go and live the life that I prepared for you? So I actually quit my almost 6-figure government job, took my daughter out of school in the middle of winter break. She didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to her friends. And I had already been divorced at that time, still dealing, of course, with PTSD and, self-esteem. And I went through bankruptcy and car repossessions and all this stuff that's going on, not knowing that every single valley was leading me to walk in my purpose and power now. So I came here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I could not get a job. 2 bachelor's degrees, master's, combat veteran. I could not get a job, not knowing everything was being prepared for me to be where I'm at now. I could only get a pizza delivery job. Oh, I hated that job. But when no one was at home to get those pizzas with DoorDash, as you said, Mr. Lee, when nobody was there for DoorDash, I got to keep the food. So I started feeding the homeless men and women on the streets in Uptown Charlotte. That's where I started running across all the veterans. That's when my heart started being touched that I needed to do something, not knowing I was in one of the worst seasons of my life, but I was also being prepared to be in the best season of my life. So with that being said, we definitely had some hard times, some trying times. But the thing is, even as an entrepreneur, not giving up, knowing that there's something more inside of you to keep going, knowing that we've been called to serve someone else, that it's not about me. And that's how Faith, Hope, Love for Veterans was birthed, by me going through one of the worst seasons of my life, ended me here with you right now in one of the best seasons of my life. So the thing is, always believe in yourself for more. Always know when you're in the valley and going through the worst season that you will get to the mountaintop one day, but you have to keep pressing forward. And for my daughter, it taught her too. Hey, you can start over. And sometimes you have to give up things that you've had so you can start to appreciate where you're at in your story and your journey, because we can always get material things back. So that's part of my story and how I ended up here with you and being on the Black Business Expo yesterday.
Well, I appreciated everything. Matt, if you could, I'd love to hear about how you got your business started and some of maybe the hardships that you faced as well, because I know it's definitely something that's a passion of yours, and I'd love to hear a little bit more of your story as to how you got your business going and some of the things that inspired you to keep it running, and even whether you stayed in corporate America as you've been running this business of yours.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I had a job as a ticket salesperson for a company called Worldwide Ticket Craft. And they're a ticket printing company, which I didn't even understand there was actually a thing. But when I was looking for work many years ago, I got lucky, got the job there, spent about 7 years really learning about the ticketing industry, and had some great years there. I really enjoyed it, but moved on from the company, ended up working for LexisNexis doing some anti-money laundering solution sales. And I was there for about 6 or 7 years, and I went to a Marlins game, and Edinson Volquez happened to throw a no-hitter, and I didn't realize it, but I had a digital ticket, and over the loudspeaker they said, "Would you like a printed ticket? Come to the box office." So I said, "Yeah, this is great." I went on to the box office outside, and it wasn't a huge line, but there were certainly people there. Went up to the front and said, "Thanks for this. Can you put Edinson Volquez no-hitter on the ticket?" And they're like, "No, we can't." And I know they can because of all my experience in the ticketing world. And so that's how the idea started. Next week, I was at a concert, and I wanted a printed ticket. I figured, let me see what they say. And they wanted, normally they charge $5 for it, but they said they're moving to all digital, and they're going to start charging $20 for it. And I'm like, $20 for something that costs them less than a penny? That seems a little crazy to me. And it's not that they want you to pay $20 for it. They want it to go away. So that's when I really thought, I have something here. Started the idea and just got everything going. I was still working at LexisNexis until April of last year. So a couple of years, I did some events. I had some good partnerships. I started building it. But really during the pandemic, got everything rolling and in position to be successful now that events are going back. And so that's obviously, a hard thing to do, to start up a business in events when events aren't going on. But it offered me the opportunity to have some great conversations with people that I probably never would have been able to get in touch with or had any of their time if things were going. And then also not having to, worry about, hey, do I need to get this event, or that event last year really gave me time to I guess, build my brand, I would say. I started the Wolf Den, which is my show that we go live pretty much every day, and just started making connections and doing a lot of networking. That's how I met you on Brian's show, but all over networking. I think you were at the locker room as well.
Yeah, the locker room.
Yeah, so it's met some really high quality people through networking. And I don't know if I'm going to help them or they're going to help me or we'll help each other or we're just going to be people who are connected. But it's been great. And, I actually gave notice before I knew the pandemic was coming, got married, went on my honeymoon, came back, and a week later, like 3 weeks later, it was it. My paycheck was gone and I'm all in on Ticket Time Machine. And I wouldn't change it if I had to go back. I'd do the same exact thing. Just like Nikki said, you gotta go all in on yourself and just believe that what you're doing is going to pay off, and that always having the feeling that I'm going to be okay no matter what. And I'm lucky to be in that position. But it's I'm excited for the future, and I'm happy to help where I can, and I'm happy to get help with other people who can help. I also do a show called Learning LinkedIn Open to Work. It's a series on LinkedIn where we bring on people who are looking for jobs and highlight them. So they come on and talk about themselves for about 10 or 15 minutes, who they are, what they've done, what they're looking for. And we've had some panelists on with some great advice and people in the comments giving every episode. There's been a new resource that I've never heard of that other people introduce. So you can find more information, connect with me on LinkedIn. But if you're looking for work, we're probably going to do another one, I would say beginning of July. We do about one a month. And it's just...
That was actually, I was just on Clubhouse and actually saw a young lady that was doing something similar, but it was for an industry that folks don't think about because of the pandemic. But she's got an organization called, and Sandy's her first name, I'm trying to remember the last name, but it's an organization called Roadies Care or Roadie Cares. But it's basically like the roadies that you see at shows. A lot of them were definitely impacted by the pandemic. So she's actually trying to help them find jobs because they've got a tremendous amount of skills, but a lot of them were not working in the show business because a lot of those concerts weren't happening. So she actually created an organization that's trying to help them get out there and find work as events are coming back. And some of them, as she was saying on Clubhouse, can even translate into the film skills as well. So she's looking at bringing them work both in their event space, but even in other jobs, maybe even in corporate America. I'd love to hear from all of you. And you actually mentioned it, Matt, and I know that it came up at the Black Business Expo, the importance of networking. And I'd love to hear all of y'all's thoughts about the importance of networking, because definitely it's something that I don't think is talked about as much as it probably should be, even though I think that it's a vital thing to happen in the world. So I guess I'll just go left to right and everything. So I'll start with you, Nikki. If you could talk about the importance of networking, but I'd also love to hear from Jesse, Brian, and Courtney, and even Maya, because definitely it seems like that's even important with what goes on in the pageant. So if you could share a little bit about your thoughts about the importance of networking.
Definitely. So we've all heard that our network is our net worth, right? Mark, I was introduced to you or the Black Business Expo by Dr. Belinda Kendo, and through her one connection opened up several doors just this week. And then through that connection, open another door. So the people that we meet, of course, they can open doors that we would not even known had existed or not even had access to. So networking is great. Definitely taking a turn being here on Zoom or StreamYard, but definitely Zoom for the most part too, and networking. But I also think too, being able to be online, I've met so many people at once. Instead of, just being at a network event and only being able to speak to one person at a time, you're able to see a lot of different people and connect in ways that we would not have even been able to connect before the pandemic. So even though a lot of, not so great things have happened with the pandemic, of course, loss of lives and, our country being shut down, I think it's really brought us together more. And it's brought people together, once again, who we wouldn't even have met. Now I have a group that I meet with. One person's in Pakistan, one person's in Abu Dhabi, one person is in Nigeria, and the other person is in the Netherlands. And we meet once a week. I would have never even met them, if it hadn't been for the pandemic and if it hadn't been for connection. So once again, I truly believe that our net worth is our network.
Right. What about you, Jesse? The importance of networking, like I said, you networked already with your friends and your associates that you grew up with, but I'm sure that as a business, y'all have been networking with a lot of new people that are helping the business take off, including some from around here. So I'd love to hear from you, Brian and Courtney, about the importance of networking to y'all's endeavor in this bourbon field.
Sure. We actually did it in Georgia over the weekend, and it was our first event. We actually put our bottles out to the public, and our phones have not stopped ever since that event. There's people reaching out to us from multiple fields, Hawaii, Australia. It was just an amazing event. So networking can be powerful, and it seems like the common theme on this panel is that everybody really, I guess the pandemic really it made everybody a lot more powerful. I think it was a sign that we all needed to slow down and refocus, because I wouldn't have ever reached out to Courtney or Brian if it wasn't for the pandemic, to be honest. So it's very powerful tool on the networking is.
Yeah. What about you, Brian? And we even coming back to Matt and Nikki, have you been thinking about, and I guess I'll come back to Jesse on that question as well, but are y'all committed to keeping the job? Because I know y'all also have regular jobs as well. So are you committed to them staying in those regular job lanes, or are you looking at even like at some point this being the main job? Because I oftentimes think of a difference between a job and a career. To me, the career is that thing that you love, whereas a job is something that you go to for that 9 to 5 feeling and all of that. But I was wondering where y'all were with that, and also the importance of networking.
Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the networking has been really integral to our growth as far as the company. The established relationships we have outside of business is what creates our larger, network for us to reach to Poland and other countries and become more available worldwide. worldwide. So without those friendships and business ships, however, these people have become in our lives over time, they've helped us foster our business beyond just our borders or what the people who we know. It's the only way to grow, in my opinion. You could have a great product, but if you have a small network, you're only going to have a small scope. So opening it up to everyone is the way to go. So that's my feeling on networking.
Yeah. What about you, Courtney? And then I'll come back to that whole thing about having the job versus and trying to maintain creating an entrepreneurship business while also working, because I know Dickie had done that also.
Yeah, just to touch on the networking. I mean, you guys have all said some amazing things, and all those things that we're thinking about in this stage of our business. Networking is very, very powerful in our business, because without networking, we can't reach the masses. And I think it's important to broaden that scope, right? And I think during the pandemic, we've had the opportunity to, like Nikki mentioned, just be a part of different groups, a larger group. We're reaching people in different countries. We're reaching out to folks that we haven't talked to in years, and we're only able to do that through networking, through social media platforms, through Zoom, I've been on so many Zoom calls and so many Skype calls, and all these video calls all day. And I think that's all about networking. It's all about getting in front of people. And I think the pandemic has helped us do that. And I think it's very important to our business.
No, yeah, definitely. Jesse, if I can come back to that other question, I didn't want to come to mine as well, but how are y'all feeling? Because I do sometimes have friends of mine that want to launch businesses, but they've also got the 9-to-5 jobs. And sometimes they feel that the 9-to-5 jobs are what's stopping them from going after their business. But y'all are doing that balancing act, and it seems to be working for you. Because as I recall, all three of you still have 9-to-5 jobs in addition to the work that y'all are doing in terms of creating this business.
Sure. All of us are in corporate America. Courtney works for ESPN. Brian, he works for the government, and I'm a pharmaceutical engineer. So I always tell these guys, have a safe exit, but do it safely. So that's been our thing. So we are gearing towards actually exiting safely, but hey, we're going to do it smart. Smart. If it comes to the point where we have to choose, the love is going to be with our company, hands down. So we'll do it smart.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Do y'all have any more comments on that, Brian and Courtney? And how was it with you, Nikki? Because like I said, you were pretty much almost forced to go into it and everything.
Oh, Jesse, I don't know why everybody else gets the easy way, playing it smart and a smart exit. I feel like the Lord always requires me to go cold turkey. And I'm like, Lord, do you remember I'm a single parent and I have a teenager and I'm trying to do it all by myself? So after a few years, when the Lord called me to quit my government job and I started the, foundation, still was doing everything by myself. I got into a great home-based business. I was a supervisor making good money. I had been there for about 2.5 years. And about 4 weeks ago, I felt, I'm not supposed to be here anymore. I started purpose really pulling on me to launch a coaching business for women, because I'm an encourager, an inspirer, and an uplifter anyways. That's what I do. And I have been doing it on the side, and I felt, oh my God, I felt the same way I felt back in Ohio. I said, Lord, please no. I really felt that, as Marc said, my 9-to-5 was getting in the way. And I took a week off, and I had to get myself together and had to talk with myself. How could I stay in my 9-to-5 when I knew exactly what my purpose was, and that 9-to-5 was no longer my purpose? So once again, here I go. I'm like, I know what I've been called to do. And if this is what I've been called to do, then I know doors will open. I hadn't even told anyone that June 1st, I was walking away from my full-time position. Not a safe exit, Jesse. I did not have an exit plan. It was like, hey, I'm going for the island and I'm going to burn the boats behind me. So remember, June 1st, I felt I have to give this job up. I was so nervous. Do you know, out of nowhere, Dr. Kendall sends me the message about the Black Business Expo. And then I get another message and another message. Like, doors started to open on May 31st because I had already put it out in the atmosphere in my home. I hadn't even told anybody that I was doing this on June 1st. And when I tell you the doors that have opened, the past 14 days is unbelievable. I am so overwhelmed in a good way, if that is, a thing, with so many opportunities, radio shows and interviews and magazines. And I'm like, whoa. But see, I had to bet on myself this time and believe that, hey, I have to give it all that I have to give it, because I know this is my purpose. And I realized I could no longer stay at my 9 to 5. So a lot of people aren't as radical as I am. And I'm thinking, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Let's say if I can't pay a few bills. Let's say if I can't. What I'm doing and what I'm creating, this will all be a memory. And as we say in the military, life is all about the story. So, hey, yeah, I quit my job and I'm starting this business, and I can say, guess what? I had to rearrange some bills for a couple of, months. Things did getting paid, but look where I'm at now. Look at the lives I'm touching now. And if I continue to show up and serve, the money will come. So, Mark, for the people that their 9 to 5 are holding them back, and they're stuck, frustrated, overwhelmed, unhappy, unfulfilled, like where I was, I'm not going to tell you to quit your job, but what I am going to say is really believe in yourself, bet on yourself, have a plan, and it can be done. You can walk away, even as Jesse said, in a safe way, but it can be super overwhelming trying to juggle both.
True. Hey, true. Yeah. And I just want to piggyback, Mark. I ain't mean to cut you off, but it's talking about that June 1st date, because we hit our 1-year anniversary on June 1st. I woke up on June 1st, 2020, and I had a vision for this company. And 1 year later, so it's something about that June 1st date. That's amazing to me. So.
Yeah, sometimes that June 1st, or sometimes there's just a date that has that kind of significance and everything. I was going to bring Maya back into the conversation, because one of the things that I was curious about and everything was that a lot of times we don't think about the dream stealers and all of that. And I know even in the pageant world and in the business world, so I want to hear from everybody, including Matt. And I've actually had this conversation with a number of folks on this show and a couple of the other streaming shows that I've had, which is those folks that oftentimes want to discourage us from what we're accomplishing. So I guess I'll start with you, Maya. So how did you deal with those dream stealers? Because I'm sure that there were folks even in your high school and in your colleges that were sitting there going like, Maya, why are you trying to be Miss North Carolina and want to be Miss America? It's not worth it. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to give you anything. And they're basically trying to do the various dream stealing aspects of what goes on. So I'd love to hear how you dealt with that. And then I'd love to hear from the other panelists as well as to how they dealt with it. Because I'm oftentimes frustrated by two groups of folks, and I'll bring the other ones out as well. And the other one is actually going to involve a friend of your mom. But we'll start with the dream stealers. But Ray Pascal has this term that he uses about folks that are what he calls the brain drain folks. And I'll explain what that means after we talk about the dream stealers. But definitely, how do you deal with the folks that are dream stealers?
So my internet, it's not my friend right now. So wave or something if you can't hear me. But it's so interesting because there have been so many people in the past 10 years of my life and beyond who have asked that question of why do you continue to do this? I didn't win my local title on my first try. It took me about 5 times when I decided to compete for Miss North Carolina to even win a local title. And someone asked my mom, why is she doing this again? And one, I truly believe that the woman that I'm going to present in 8 days is going to be the reason why. So just you wait to those people who have, discouraged and have naysayed for so long. But people don't realize, like I attest to earlier, of the different things that pageants can bring you. We talked earlier about, I heard everyone talk about the connections they make. And my mom has always reiterated to me that it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And so through the pandemic, and I know we're talking about the positive things that have come through such a crazy, crazy time in the past 15 months of our lives, but every woman is supposed to have a platform or a social impact initiative, as we call it now. And mine is the arts. I've grown up in theater arts and have grown up in that aspect and truly believe that the arts have shaped my life. So when the world shut down and live theater and live performances shut down, I didn't really know what to do to promote this platform that I've been doing for 10 years. So I decided to take everything virtually. And I've been doing virtual interviews with artists and hold spaces for them for 8 months and allow them to come on my platform and talk. I've raised money for community theaters all across our state. And to what Nikki was saying, I was in a 9-to-5 that I was not happy with. I kept preaching to others that finding your happiness and going to places where you're being nurtured and grown. And I was not there. So I went to my mother and I said, I'm quitting my job. And that was not a fun conversation because my mother did not agree with me. I said, I don't have a plan right now, but I know I don't need to be here. So literally a week later, I received an email from the CEO of North Carolina Theater and said, hey, we have this job, we're recrafting it, and we think you'd be perfect for it. And it was because of that outreach that I had done through the arts where I was on a Zoom. I had an email Monday, was on a Zoom call Tuesday, and was signing paperwork on Thursday. And for the past 6 months, I have been the communications manager at North Carolina Theater. And that is through the connections that I've made. And going back, that's through the skills I've learned through pageants. I would have never been in this opportunity without having that platform and having the access and tools through the Miss America organization. I would not be in this job. And I truly believe that.
No,
So
definitely.
to the naysayers, I don't keep those people around.
Understood. Matt, what about you? I'm sure that you had people that were sitting there going like, what? You're going to create a ticket company? There's already Ticketmaster. There's already this and that. I'm sure you've heard plenty of naysayers. So how did you deal with them and what was your reaction to them?
Well, everyone, I think there's a misunderstanding part of what I'm doing because I still outreach to people just looking to discuss. And they're like, well, we already have tickets or we're all going mobile. And I said, yeah, that's why we exist. But I left my full-time job about a year ago, and I had a lot of people telling me, why don't you just stay until the business takes off a little bit? And I was making very good money and had a very flexible schedule, but I feel like I needed to go all in, and I wouldn't be able to be where I am today if I was still working. So I'd have more money, but my future, my career, I'm building my empire here, and I'd be so far behind. So, I'd rather be ahead of the game. I did a good job of saving, up until the point that I left to where I said, look, I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to be able to hold off and not make money, knowing even if the pandemic didn't happen, I still wouldn't have made any money in the first year, most likely, because it's hard to get everything going and get, there's a lot of timing with events. You got to talk to them at the right time and get to the right person. And so it also took me time to just change my whole LinkedIn from my old job to, the new one, which I didn't announce until April 1 when I was done and I was officially free. So, but like everyone else, you feel it's what you have to do. Betting on yourself, I'll bet on myself all day, every day. And I got a great support team. And even though they probably would have preferred and thought I should have stayed, they were supportive in whatever I needed. But it's tough. It's there's no one to tell someone, hey, you need to stay or you need to go. I think if you're not happy in life, wherever you are, a job, a relationship, where you're living, you should do whatever you can to change that. And because it's just, we don't know how long life is going to be. It can be short sometimes, and just got to be happy. That's really the most important thing for me, is being happy, and the people around me that I care about, being able to spend time with them. Everything else is just, the end means to an end.
That makes a lot of sense. Courtney, if I remember correctly, you're the one that works at ESPN, and I'm sure that folks were probably definitely telling you that you had lost your mind trying to start a bourbon company when you're working for a major sports franchise and all of that. So they're probably like, you've got the dream job. Why are you trying to create a business empire with your two best high school friends and everything when you've got what some people would consider a dream job? Because I've got friends that work in like some of the networks, whether it's ABC or some of the film communities, and definitely ESPN is one that we're always paying attention to, me being a sports fan. And also folks are probably like, hey, Courtney, you've got the great job. Why are you even bothering?
No, I mean, that's a good point. ESPN was my dream job. I've been with the company for 21 years, and it's just like, hey, this is my retirement plan. I'm looking at what I want to do after ESPN. And so I told Jesse, I was like, look, I'm playing a long game here. I've got a window, of when I want to get out. And, we had a lot of conversations about, kind of what that looks like. And, I got a lot of eye rolls and kind of like, are you crazy? What are you doing? But I'm doing it for me. And I think that, I've done the corporate, thing. I've done that, and I don't want to do something that kind of brings wealth and generates income for me outside of a corporation, right? And so I want to put all that energy into myself, put all that energy into my family, and create generational wealth. Because working for a job doesn't make you rich, right? You're making the corporation rich, right? And so I want to be that corporation. I want to put that money back into me, right? Because I know my worth. I know what I want, and that for me is just confirmation that, hey, I'm doing the right thing, I'm on the right track. I linked up with these guys, they found me, and I appreciate that, and it was just like, hey, I was at that point where I'm like, all right, it's time for something new, it's time for something different. But again, I'm at my dream job. I'm not unhappy. I love my job. I love what I do. I love sports, but it's time to take that next step, right, in my career and in my personal growth, and do something that I want to do. I'm very passionate about bourbon. I'm very passionate. I mean, it's a part of my lifestyle, right? And so I'm very passionate about that, and so I want to just pour into that. But yeah, I've gotten a lot of people who are just like rolling their eyes at me, like but I can't live for them. I got to be happy. I got to do what I want. What's
Yeah, you
best
definitely
for
got to
me.
live for them
Right?
and everything. And I'd love to hear from Brian and Jesse and definitely Nikki about that as well. But before we get to that, I did have two other quick sports questions for you, Courtney. And one of them is the fact that, we're in the middle of the NBA and all of that, the NBA playoffs. I'm actually rooting for a certain team because I've got a bias going on because I actually root for teams not always based on geography or things of that nature. I do root for the Durham Bulls because of geography and some of our Carolina teams because of geography and living here. But I also follow around Doc Rivers. So wherever Doc Rivers is at, I'm rooting for his team because we went to school together. So I'm rooting for the 76ers this year and everything, whereas I was rooting for the Clippers last year. So it's kind of like I'm always following Doc around to wherever he's at and rooting for him and some of our other Warriors or that's what they were called when I was there. I might be torn if he has to go against the Phoenix Suns since Jay Crowder is over there. So I might be a little torn at that point. But Doc, I've got a longer relationship with in terms of being a fan, even though it's been years since we've seen each other. But my question for you is, and a two-part questions, and they're totally different, but then I'll come back to the Dream Killers and everything. But one is we definitely saw a lot of our NBA athletes take a cause up and become activists. And now a lot of that was around Black Lives Matter. And I was just wondering, as one that has worked in ESPN and seen our sports folks, some of your thoughts around that. Because I definitely saw both the WNBA and the NBA players and the NFL players pick up the mantle and have a conversation around some of the important issues, whether that was Black Lives Matter or even some of the things that we're seeing with the Asian community and the Latin American community. So I was just wondering some of your thoughts on that. And then my other question, which is totally off that ball and everything, is if you could share some of your own experiences with some of the athletes and everything. I'm sure Matt, who's a sports guy, might like to hear some of those as well.
No, for your first question, I think it's very important for athletes to speak up and to have a voice. I don't think they should shut up and dribble, right? They should definitely have a voice and they have that platform. And it's very important to express, how are you feeling about change and how badly we want and we need change in our society today. And I think I encourage it. I encourage LeBron James. Every time he has a press conference, he's always talking about social injustice. He's always talking about things that are relevant and prevalent, very prevalent in these times. So I commend him. I commend those guys. Even in my small platform that I have, I always try to speak up. If I see something that's not right in corporate, I always try to speak up and say something about it, because I think so many times that we just stay silent about things because we want to be secure in our position, right? And so I think now it's very important to stand up and to speak out against racial injustice and things that are not right. So yeah, I definitely commend those guys for that. It's very important. And then the second part, the second question there, I
It
think I
was
might
just
have
like,
missed
if you
that.
had any stories that you want to share about your own sports experiences, having that 20 years, if there were any athletes, and I'm sure there have been many, you just mentioned LeBron, that definitely touched you in your own career and your own thoughts and your own interactions with them.
Yeah, I think the one that sticks out for me is Magic Johnson. Magic, I used to work with Magic for years on NBA Countdown, and we used to have in-depth conversations on the set. And Magic told me one day, he said, when I go home, I just go to my mom's house, and everybody has to come to my mom's house to see me. And he gets a lot of flack for that because everybody, all of his buddies, always say, "Oh, you're too good to come by. You're too good to hang out with us." And he's like, "Well, I have a larger responsibility, right?" And he can't put himself in a position where something can happen. Something, anything can happen. It's Magic Johnson, right? And so it's important to go home and to spend time with your family and to know where you come from, right? And it's important to give back to your community, but in certain situations, you can't put yourself out there in every situation, right? And so that was like, and we used to have like conversations like that. I mean, this is Magic Johnson I'm talking to, right? And so for me, I'm a huge fan. I was a huge Lakers fan growing up, and so just to be able to sit down and talk to him about life was very, very special for me. And that was one of my most, And then the second best situation that I found myself in was I was in the locker room with Kobe Bryant, right? And so we were doing an interview with Kobe, and he's just sitting in the locker room with like 2 feet in two ice buckets, head down, just drenched in sweat, right? And he looked up and he was like, "Hey kid, what do you want to say?" And I was actually like with a microphone, right? And I didn't have a reporter because I was just going in to get some quick sound. I just froze up. I didn't know what to say. I was like, this is one of my idols is Kobe Bryant. He just looked up. He looked right at me. And he was like, "Hey kid, what do you want to say?" And I froze up. And then I finally got out of it. I said, "I love you, Kobe. You're the greatest." And that was a true fan moment, right? And he was just like, "All right, got it." But
Wow.
it was the most embarrassing thing. But that's one of the things that like just stuck with me in my young career with ESPN. And I just had that opportunity. That I was just in those. I found myself in those situations that those are like lifetime memories. So those are my two kind of fan moments or things I
Before I
take
get to
with me.
Brian, because sometimes questions pop into my head as I'm going to these interviews and everything. Before I get to Brian and the Dream Shows, I want to come back to Maya, because one of the things that I sometimes feel happens with the pageant, and particularly American pageant, is that a lot of times the contestants will give these great answers. And this was before the pageant about, what are we going to do to better the world and all of that. But they seem to be also almost like a little bit surface, a little bit rehearsed, and things of that nature. And that's always been the complaint about them and everything. So I was just wondering your thoughts about that, because, like I said, you'll hear people saying, I want world peace, I want this, and I want that. But it's definitely the very general kind of statements. Whereas a lot of times I think that the fans are looking for a little bit more detailed reaction and everything. But they get this kind of rehearsed version of kind of the simple accolades of what they want in the world, whether that's end hunger, world peace, or things of that nature. So I'm sure that that's something that you also get flack about as well.
Well, I definitely do want world peace. So let's get that clear. But I would have to say this past year changed the game for everyone, and especially for women who look like me competing in a pageant. And let's be real for 2 seconds, that wasn't created for women who look like me. And we had a lot of tough, needed conversations within the organization, especially in North Carolina. What can we do to be at the forefront of supporting all of the women in the organization? And so I am very thankful that I have been able to speak out for things that I'm passionate about. I think to piggyback off of what Courtney said, no athlete should not have to just shut up and dribble. And women who compete in pageants shouldn't have to just shut up and smile. That we are smart women and there are things that we are passionate about. And it was very hard sometimes for me to get on this platform and be this role model on social media when I had just watched someone be murdered in real time. And so it was an opportunity for me. I know there was one post I posted and I said, it's hard right now. It's hard to show up right now. It's hard to be this role model. And that shows that I'm authentic and real, that every day is not a good day. And that is what we need to see more of in this organization. And I hope that I can be at the forefront of that as well, is that we need role models that show we're real and we go through real emotions, but we also are passionate about social justice issues for everyone.
Yep, I definitely understand that. Brian, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Dream Stealers, and if I can loop it into the other conversation as well. We've seen a lot of people dealing with diversity and inclusion, and they're creating diversity and inclusion offices in corporate America. But sometimes you have to wonder how much of that is just lip service in order to help and say that they are doing something in that space and not actually doing diversity and inclusion. So I just wondering your thoughts on both of those, the Dream Stealers and also those folks that are creating these diversity and inclusion initiatives around everything. This is Pride Month, so we're also seeing around not just the Black Lives Matter movement, but also the LGBTI community, as well as the Asian community with what's been happening with them, and even our Latin American brothers and sisters. But I was just wondering how you feel corporate America is doing in terms of addressing these issues.
There's still a gap between what is said and actually what is occurring. I can more than tell you on many occasions that I'm the only Black face within the boardroom. I've reached a level of work that I do for the government that, I'm only there to fix issues. So when I walk into the room, I look around, there's maybe one other. What really transformed me as far as that goes is there was an outgoing GS 18, 17, some super high level elder Black guy. And he looked over to me, he was there to try to reorganize our department. He looked at me and said, "Look, man, you're the next generation. You got to do this." And I mean, hey, I'm just sitting there like, dude, I just do nothing but program. What can I change, in that regard? What can I do, At this point in my life, I was just overworking myself because I thought being busy meant being successful. I was working 9 to 5, and then it's 7 to 7 a.m. at the fire department. I would literally have only 2 hours to myself a day. But after talking to him, and maybe this lends into what Nikki did, speaks about, and it's all God, and then I went from working 52, weeks a year to 25 weeks a year. I negotiated my own contracts, my own 401k, my own healthcare benefits, and that empowered me to, be more assertive when I came into the boardroom. But watershed moment I've shared with Jesse, and it's probably the only other time in my life as a grown man I've ever felt like crying. I was interviewing for Bridgewater, the #1 hedge fund in the world. The guy said, "Oh man, I don't want to talk about your accolades or anything." He said, "I want to know if your boss is doing something wrong, and it, would you go tell on him?" I said, "Nah, there's no way I'd get fired. It's not possible." He said, "Well, you know what? You need to go back in your life and figure out why you can't do that. But you're not fit for this job." And I mean, dude, I was in the car crying, tears. I cannot believe that I was absolutely qualified for this position. But the one thing that I did not have was a soft skill that, hey, I'm African American. I'm in corporate. You're in lockstep. Eggshells, whatever description you want to bring to the table to describe who you are within that global system of that. But since then, oh man, God stepped in. That was the guy I needed to talk to. And now when I walk in these boardrooms, hey, yeah, okay, I'm the only one, but just know, like I used to sneak people into the new movie theater when I was in high school. I'm sneaking a couple of guys in behind me. They're coming in. I'm gonna keep the door propped open. So that's what it takes. It takes, it's gonna take somebody to go in there and be okay with taking those shots and swimming with the sharks and being tested to bring in the other African Americans or persons of color. So now, when they look at me, they see the others, and it's okay. So yes, it takes one to step out, to just take the brunt for everybody. Just like the guy who was the first Black, pilot. He wouldn't even put his face on his actual application. in the year 2020, I'm still doing that now, just so I can get an interview. So these are the things that generationally have to be, have to be taught, they have to be spoke about. This is what I've done. This is what you may have to do so that you can open the doors for others. So until these are no longer things that have to be practiced within the African-American community, they will continue to foster and fester on.
Now, one of the conversations, and then I definitely want to hear from Jesse, but one of the conversations that was happening at the Black Business Olympics, and they did a couple of, most of them were individuals giving speeches like what Nikki did and like what Bruce George did, but there were a couple of panel discussions, and I know one of them was a barbershop discussion. They had a sister talk, but they also had a barbershop discussion, and part of what they discussed was the code switching that goes on in corporate America. So, Jesse, as you're thinking about the Dream Stealers, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that code switching as well, because that was one of the things that came up in the barbershop conversation, was how you sometimes have to put on a different mindset if you're in that corporate America where it may be a majority white audience and all of that. So I was just wondering how you deal with that in corporate America.
I actually learned it from Brian a long time ago. I was actually in the military, and my grandma passed away, and I was at Brian's house, and Brian was interviewing for a job, and he was just talking, and he went downstairs to take the call, and I heard someone talking, and I leaned over the steps like, who is this guy talking? I had no clue it was Brian. But it was that code switching that he felt he had to do that. So I didn't understand it at the time. And I started teaching a diversity and inclusion for Caterpillar about 10 years ago. And I was teaching it, and a guy told me that I wasn't expecting this from you. And I was like, what do you mean you wasn't expecting it from me? He felt because I'm a Black man, ex-military, tattooed up, I was supposed to check the boxes. And a lot of companies who I was giving this message to was doing this for the initiative standpoint. Like I need to do this because it's what we're supposed to do versus living it. So I've seen it from both sides. And Brian actually helped me realize, like, sometimes you got to put that face on. But once I started teaching it, the more authentic I was, the more the messages got across. And so I kind of seen it from both sides, and I learned that. But I do want to quote, I'm not going to tell you who the quote is from, because it might take away from it. But he said, you can let the dream stealers steal your self-esteem or use your arrogance as this theme to power your dreams. It actually came from Kanye West. I wasn't going to say his name because he's so controversial, but that line has taught me to like, I stutter. I always stuttered growing up. So I was hesitant to put myself out there, but now I don't care. Is that I have a message and I'm gonna get it out there. So I'm so arrogant in the message, I don't care how the delivery comes off. So I'm up in front of Fortune 500 companies stuttering, and I get an applause because the message is where it needed to be. So that's what
definitely. Nikki, I imagine you probably have to deal with it as well, and maybe even on a three-pronged force, because you're African-American, you're woman, and you're also military. So I'm thinking that you probably have to do a whole lot of code switching between all of the various ways that you have to present yourself to corporate America, even when you're going into this new version of trying to get your message out as you're creating your nonprofit and everything. So I'm imagining, because my mom actually worked in the nonprofit world. She was the first president of the Golden Leaf Foundation. So I know how the nonprofit world can also have a little bit of code switching going on as well. But I'm just wondering your thoughts about how you deal with that.
Definitely. And Jesse, like you said, my 14-year-old daughter had the same experience probably a few years ago, heard me on the phone or somewhere. And she says, Mom, how do you do that? How do you, you can be at one place, talk like this, and be in another place, talk like this, and you can do that. You're just so relatable to everybody. And you're right. We definitely have to wear a lot of hats: African-American, female, military, nonprofit, entrepreneur, radical for the Lord, and I can't be all that in one place. And when you have, as an entrepreneur, or even before you step out and become an entrepreneur, you have these big dreams and goals and all these great ideas that you want to accomplish, that you want to do. And we want people to be happy for us. We want people to rejoice with us and cheer us on. But I've come to find out that just because I dream big doesn't mean other people dream big. And they mean well, because some people, mean well, trying to keep you in a box, trying to keep you safe. But when you have something that's inside you that you have to let out, you have to get used to surrounding yourself around the people with the same mindset as you. So when you do have a naysayer come, especially for my nonprofit, people think I'm nuts, the things that I'm still trying to get done before the end of this year. And they're just like, you know, you can't do that. You don't have a lot of impact stories. You haven't been around enough to ask that much money for a grant. I'm like, look, this is what needs to get done. So I had to learn, you know, as Jesse said, come off with the delivery, but be confident in myself and not to let those people steal my dreams, because they are my dreams and they're not in them, you know. And I had to overcome a lot of different limiting mindset beliefs myself that I teach my clients to work through too. Limiting belief, like, I can't do that. You know, I'm a degreed person. And then I think, well, I don't have a degree in that. I can't do that. And you think you can't do these things until one day you realize I can do anything I set my mind to. That's what we tell the kids growing up, our children, nieces and nephews. But why do we lose that along the way? Why do we think that we can't still do what's inside of us? So even with walking away at my job just a few weeks ago, I couldn't tell anybody. I was in a veterans meeting the Thursday before I was supposed to quit, and I hadn't told anybody. And I thought I was okay with it. Just like a panel like this, when it came time for me to speak, I just burst into tears. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so embarrassed. But I had been holding it because I couldn't share it with anybody, that I had to step out and fulfill this purpose that I was being called to do. So you kind of have to get in a space to have tough skin and deal with your mindset daily and encourage yourself daily to know that if you put your mind to it, you definitely can do it.
Yeah, definitely understand that and
Nikki,
everything.
I saw this quote the other day, and it said, don't expect other people to understand the dream that God has given you. It wasn't a conference call. And so that's something that sticks with me too. Like, no one else was on the call. So no one else is expected to understand the dream.
No, that makes a lot of
And we
sense. And
can't keep
everything.
trying to make people understand. And we can't even keep trying to explain. We don't even need to explain because they're not going to get it.
Man, that's very true. One of the things I was going to ask you, Maya, and it actually comes back to some of the conversation that we were having and everything, was Nikki was talking about the fact that she's got her 14-year-old daughter there, and you're actually on the opposite side of that, because you were actually 8 years ago that 14-year-old daughter, and your mom was over there working at the Carolina Theater and everything. So what advice would you give for her in terms of dealing with her teenage daughter as they are in this new city and everything? Because you actually had that opposite experience of being the teenage daughter, even though you're now a young adult, but you were definitely the teenage daughter hanging around the Carolina Theater some 8 years ago and everything. So what kind of advice would you give to Nikki as she's in the motherhood role based on your own mother, Cora?
Oh man, I could brag about my mother all day long if we had the opportunity. I think one of the things that continues to stick out about my mother and the relationship that we have is that she always listens to me, not to respond, but listens to understand. And we are very different in some aspects. We're very alike in some aspects as well. But she allowed me to express my feelings. And I will never forget, I was about 8 years old. We were staying outside of a Girl Scout meeting, and my mom said something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I asked why. And this lady standing next to my mom said, "You let your children ask you why?" And my mom turned to the lady very calmly, because if you know my mom, she's a very calm woman. She doesn't get out of her character. And she said, "If I don't let her ask why, she'll never know." Mm-hmm. And that has stuck with me years later, is that I have the opportunity to ask why. And now when I am in corporate America, there was an incident that came up the other day at work, and my boss said, "I think we should do this." And I said, "But what's the purpose behind it? Why?" And when we all sat back, we were like, wow, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe this isn't what we should be doing. And that has given me the confidence to take on the world. And so my mom's my biggest supporter. So that's it. Just be your child's biggest cheerleader, which I'm sure you already are.
Thank you, Maya. Mark, that was an excellent
I love
question.
that.
Right. Start with why. Maya, do you know I get a lot of flack because me and my daughter are so close? But as that teenager, you're right. I allowed her to ask why. And my mom is just like, what? You explain to her too much. But I had to learn to be my daughter's coach of life. And that was tough. You know, because I'm mom, I'm military. It's a military household around here. You don't ask me why I get in order, but I had to be her coach to teach her about life, you know, and she's 3 feet, 4 feet taller than me. So I'm the little mom around the house. And I'm like, I'm still your mom. Don't forget that. But you're right, Maya, and I appreciate that, because just allowing, you know, her to express herself and talk to me, even times when there's some things I don't want to hear, but we talk it out. And I think that's great that you said that. And I appreciate that. Excellent question, Mark.
Oh, yeah, glad to do that and everything. One of the other things I was going to ask, and it comes back to another friend of mine, and Maya knows this person as well, and I was going to come back to their conversation, and it kind of shifts it a little bit. But one of the things that a good friend of mine, Ray Pasco, talks about, and he used to be the rental coordinator at the at the Carolina Theater. He talks about the folks that are brain drain folks. So they're folks that want to get your information, they want to get your knowledge, they want to get all of the things that you have access to, but they don't necessarily want to give you the rewards or the pay for it and things of that nature. So I'd love to hear from all of y'all how you deal with those folks that are going to be not just the dream stealers, but the brain drain, meaning that they want to get what you have to offer, but they don't necessarily want to give you any sort of reward for it. And that can be the fiscal reward, or it can also be rewards that it can be out there in other ways, because you don't always have to have the financial rewards, but they just want to get the information and use the information for their own wherewithal or whatever. But I'd love to hear. So I'll start with you, Jesse. Jesse and everything. So what would be your answer to that? And then I'm going to just continue the conversation, but I think I heard a knock on my door. So I'm going to drop off camera for a second, but I will be right back. And I am still listening. So if you'll give that answer while I see what that knock was.
Sure. Hey, Brian and I have a lot of conversations every single day. And one of the things that we do, we have an individual who we are both friends with who don't really believe in what we're doing, but he'll call me every night and ask me for advice on how to get my trademarks, how you do business this way. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't believe in what I'm doing, but you want to pull every knowledge out of my brain. And it's like, and it's frustrating, but, you know, I do have to realize that, you know, I was once that guy, I made a phone call to this dude. I wanted to start my own bourbon company. I was praying to God that he said no and go back to bed, but he was like, let's do it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I was that guy on the phone calling people or trying to get friends. And so I can't turn people away because I was fortunate enough to have those resources to me. So even though I know they don't believe in me publicly, I know that they respect us enough to ask us questions. So I can't not be available for them, because it was people that probably shouldn't have been available for us. And we are where we are because of those people. So I don't want to miss a blessing or not be a blessing because I feel some type of way about them asking me.
I'm sure. I'd love to hear from even Matt. Matt, I'm sure that you've had folks that have wanted your skill sets, your knowledge, even some of your corporate knowledge, and don't necessarily want to give you the rewards for that. So I'd love to hear how you deal with those folks that are the brain drains or the talent drains as well. You can also call it a talent drain.
Yeah, I'm just going to continue those thoughts. I posted the other day on LinkedIn that, you know, everybody needs help. The most successful people wouldn't be where they are without getting help. And I need help. So I'm happy to help people that I can. And I'm going to ask people for help when I need it. There's always going to be people who are takers. I'm a taker and a giver. So I don't ever feel bad about asking people for help. Some people can help me. I can help some people. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's almost like someone stealing. Like if they needed it more than you did, right? You just kind of feel bad for someone because they're doing something they shouldn't, and maybe they don't know. I kind of consider myself a bit of a disruptor. I'm happy to call people out on stuff because I would like people to call me out. So some people don't even know that's what they're doing, and but some people are always going to be like that. And I don't like to reward people for bad behavior, but I'm just going to keep helping and assuming the best out of people, that they'll come and help me when I need it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about you, Nikki? How have you dealt with those folks that were talent drainers? And then I'd love to hear from Brian and Courtney as well.
Right. Because I am such a giver, encourager, inspirer, uplifter anyways, and that just comes so natural. I had to also learn that some people, even when they're trying to, be a brain drainer and get all the information out of your brain, you kind of learn to not give them too much, because you see they're not going to implement it. They're really not ready. They're really not at that place really to receive, the answer to the question of what they're asking, because they just, like you said, want to drain your brain. But sometimes you feel like you're not really ready to implement this yet. It takes some steps to implement what you're asking. I also had to learn, since I'm in a personal service-based business, that I had to charge what I was worth, because the things that I am sharing will get you results, but you have to be coachable, teachable, and willing to do the work. And some people, they want the knowledge and they want the steps, but they're not really willing. They're not ready yet. I believe people will get ready, but people sometimes aren't where they need to be when they're asking for the help that they're asking for. But even as Matt said, I'm a taker too. I was on the phone with a colleague yesterday, just draining her brain on, the process of writing a book and what she went through. And so I'm definitely that same person too. Even after the presentation yesterday, I had a couple of people reach out to me on LinkedIn via voice messenger, kind of telling me their life story on where they're at and what did they need to do. I quickly sent them a voice message right back, encouraging them, uplifting them, giving them advice and pumping them up. And I'm always there and willing to do that. But when it comes to my service, I also had to take a step back and say, hey, the knowledge you're giving is worth more than that. So definitely had to start charging what I was worth as well.
Hey, Jesse, and along those same lines, how do you deal with that whole thing of talent training? I want to add a little bit of another twist to that, because I sometimes find that in definitely corporate America, you're being pulled in so many different directions, and you always want to help people and you always want to do your best job for everybody. I know that even in my own life, I am sometimes of a people pleaser and all of that, and you can't please everybody at the same time. So sometimes things get left to the side that you don't want to get left to the side, or one is not done as effectively as the other one is done. So like you might be doing two things at the same time, and one gets your 100% and maybe the other one gets 75 or 60%, and it's not is done effectively. So how do you cope with that? Because I know I've even had that happen. To be perfectly honest, it even happened during the Black Business Expo, because I was given the organizer of that 100%, and there was another client that I was not given the amount of the amount of support that I should have given, and all of that. So I was just wondering, how do you deal with that and be able to balance doing all of this work when you've got maybe multiple clients as well as multiple endeavors?
It's hard to do. I got back to work after a 3 week absence. I had surgery, so I get back to work Monday and was told that we have a mock FDA recall. So I'm thinking like, hey, the team is going to come together. Hey, so I go to a meeting and it's like, here, Jesse, run with this. And I'm like, so he was like, I know your expertise, you can do it, but there was no support there. So it was like he was using that part of me to check his box. So you got to be careful of those type of people who want you to do things versus learning. So I'm like, no, we're going to do this together, because if I'm not here in 2 weeks, then it's not going to get done. So he was reluctant to do it, but we actually scored well. So he was gloating about it, but he would have never had this opportunity if I wouldn't have forced him to do it. He was okay with dropping it on my desk and going to his comfort space. And I'm like, no, we're doing this together. Let's go. So that holding their hands is what you got to do. And sometimes,
No, I definitely agree with you on that. What about you, Courtney? How do you deal with that? Like you said, you're over there in that ESPN land and everything, and I'm sure that there's people there that want to drain your brain and even sometimes want to get to your network. Because I mean, you're at ESPN, so I'm sure that you get the folks that are always asking you, well, how do you get in touch with, say, Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley and all of those folks wanting to exploit it, even in that regard, wanting to use your resources you have in order to get in touch with people and along those lines?
Yeah, I get that a lot, and I think you just have to deal with people where they are, right? And you put your time into the 80%, the other 20%, you don't put your time into those folks, because they only just want to tap into your resources and things and not do much with it. So I just don't focus on, on that. I keep it going. I keep it pushing. I know what it took to get me to where I am today. And I basically lay out that blueprint and say, hey, here's how you get there. Here's how you do it. Right. And then I leave it up to them to, to figure that out, because I've left those little breadcrumbs there. Right. And so what if they pick that up, they come back to me and they say, hey, I need your help with this. I'm working on this. I'm doing this. Then that piques my interest. I'm like, okay, if you're working on it and you're doing something to push yourself forward, then I'm all about helping. But I don't spend a lot of time with folks who just talk. I keep it moving.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Maya, I know you got to jump off, and then we'll actually ready to wrap everything up in a few minutes, but you'll be the first one to jump off and everything. But one of the things I was going to say is if you can share with folks that are listening how they can reach you, how they can support your run for Miss North Carolina, as well as how they can support the campaign, hopefully, for Miss America, because I would love to be able to say that I knew a Miss America when they were a young child and everything. So definitely if you can share a little bit about that. And one of the things that I get all of my guests to do, and the rest of them I will do as well on just about all of my shows, is give their words of encouragement and support for our global community, because the network is seen on a global level. We have listeners and folks that are in South Africa, Malaysia, England, and a number of other places, as well as the various states here in the United States. So if you can tell folks how they can reach you, how they can stay in touch with you, and how they can support you, and any words of encouragement that you have.
Yes. So, like I said, in 8 days, competition will begin for my final run for Miss North Carolina. And like I said, there is going to be a live stream on the final night, which I will share. You can follow me on Facebook. It's Miss Dunn 2020. On Instagram, it's at Miss Dunn _NC. And all of the updates will be shared on these platforms, what's going on during the week and how you can tune in and watch and support. If you are a faithful person, I am asking for lots of prayers during that week and leading up to the week. I am so at peace at what God is going to do. And so I'm hoping that people will continue to pray and keep me in their thoughts and just send positive vibes my way. And last, I guess my advice is as I'm closing this journey of pageantry and competing, I often think about the little girl that I once was. And the best advice I think I can think of that has been given to me that I want to exude onto young girls that I meet is to take up space and just continue to take up space. That young women, young Black women are a force to be reckoned with in our world. And all we have to do is take up that space. So I'd love to leave on that note.
No, definitely. Can't let you totally leave. I got two other quick questions and everything. One is that folks are listening and they're probably wondering, she grew up in Durham. How is she Miss Dunn? So if you could maybe briefly explain that and everything, because some folks may be wondering, because they do know some of our counties and they're going like, but she grew up in Durham. Shouldn't she be Miss Durham? But she's Miss Dunn instead and everything. So some folks may be wondering about that. So if you could clarify how that came about. And then I did have one other quick question, but definitely that clarification question.
Yes, so I'm glad you asked that, because that is a huge question for people. So the way that this competition works is that you are able to qualify for counties that are you have to live, work, or go to school in the surrounding counties. So I work in Wake County, so I was able to qualify for the Miss Dunn competition. And so one of the really cool things about competing is that you're able to represent a town that you might not have grown up in. So I've been able to represent Zebulon, Garner, and Dunn, just to name a few. And I've been able to be a part of those communities and meet so many people from these communities and make those connections that we were talking about earlier from people all over our state. So I think that's also one of the things that I believe makes me very qualified for being Miss North Carolina, is that I already have these connections all across our state.
Sounds great. And the last question I was going to ask you, and it actually comes back to we're airing live on LinkedIn in addition to some other places, is if folks are wanting to know your next step, because you just got the job at North Carolina Theater, but where do you see yourself 5-10 years down the line? And what is your goals and aspirations for yourself as you're stepping out of the pageant world and going into young adult life as woman and everything. So what are some of the things that you're looking forward to accomplishing in the next 5 to 10 years? That was the other question.
That question always scares me. So, because I would have never dreamed that I would be here in the job that I am in now and doing what I'm doing now. So I always am afraid to answer those 5-10 year questions. But as I am embarking on this new professional career in marketing and in theater, I'm able to combine both of the things that I love. So I'm hoping to continue to grow in that aspect. I always joke that my dream changes every day. I never want to lose that childlike attribute where one day I want to be this and one day I want to be that. And I'm happy with that. But right now, I would love to eventually open my own nonprofit business for artists. I was a scholarship kid. The way that I was able to be immersed in the arts was through scholarships. And that's something I'm very passionate about, that no matter what your economic status is and where you come from, you should be able to be immersed in the arts because it truly does change lives. So I hope that one day I'll be a nonprofit owner and be able to allow other children to have that same opportunity I did.
Sounds great, and hopefully you'll be following in Nikki's footsteps, having your own nonprofit, one dealing with the military and yours dealing with the arts. And I'm a big fan of arts as activists. I actually think that that's one of the main tools that artists have to have, is serving that role of being activists in our community also. So I'm sure that you will do that also. And since you're doing this live and your mom, Cora, was glad to facilitate us getting together on this part of the conversation and everything, I'm hoping that, and I'm going to put it out there nationally, that in 10 to 15 years, by then, Randy might have stepped down, other people might step down, and you can be the one that runs the Carolina Theater and everything of that nature. So we'll have you come back and run the Carolina Theater.
I would love to. Awesome.
So we'll put that out there in the nether and everything and see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Matt, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to having happen in your life in terms of where you would like the ticket company to go, but also the Wolf Den? And if you could tell a little bit more about what the Wolf Den is all about, I'm sure that folks would love to hear about that as well.
Yeah, the Wolf Den is it's a casual conversation that goes live on LinkedIn and Facebook, and we push it to social media like Twitter and Instagram. It archives on YouTube. And it started out just as I wanted to go to LinkedIn Live, and then I just had a guest. I saw someone doing a show on StreamYard, and I said, "Oh, let me try this." So I was doing 1 a week, and then it was 2 a week, and now I'm like 4 or 5 a week because I had enough people who wanted to be on the show, and I didn't want to say, "Hey, would you like to be on the show? Yeah, we'll book you in December," 6-7 months out. And we talk about anything really. It's unscripted. Anything related to sports or entertainment or movies, music, social responsibility. We talk about mental health and equality, and so we have just a wide range of guests to talk about whatever you're passionate about. And I'll keep doing it as long as people still want to come onto the show. I don't track anything. I couldn't tell you how many people watch it, but I do have a great network of people, of executives and athletes and Olympians and people in the military. And so I guarantee no matter how popular you are, I have people in my network who've never heard of you. And you just, and I forget who said it before, but with the networking, all it takes is one person to click that like button or share it. Now their whole network has the opportunity to see it. So I'd love to keep doing it. I'd invite any of you guys, if you want to come on, reach out to me and talk about it. We'll definitely give some PR for the bourbon. And Nikki, whatever you're doing, we'd love to have you guys on. So let me know. And I also have some people to connect all of you with regards to the Black Business Expo and Olympics. Some people who are pretty well involved in that type of thing. And Ticket Time Machine, we're gonna hope to have everyone get a ticket if they want it. Just keeping the printed memory alive. It's gonna take some time, but I'll get where I need to go, and we'll just be, it's just keep on one day at a time, one call at a time, and I'm excited about the future.
Sounds great. Matt, if you could, we mentioned it earlier, but could you tell a little bit about, because I was on that call with the locker room. It's the first time I'd ever been there, and that was some actually major sports people that were on there, including some that were, on that, I guess, middle level management, but definitely some great conversations. So you were on there and I was on there. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what that is all about, because I was quite pleased. I think I'm supposed to jump on one later on this week as well, if not next week. But definitely, I'd love to hear your thoughts about your experience there, and also maybe your thoughts about some of your guests on the Wolf Den that really impressed you.
Yeah, so the locker room was started by Tim Claiborne. He was actually on the Wolf Den last week, so you can check out that episode. But he just started, with the pandemic, everyone was starting weekly calls and just trying to network with each other and have a place to bounce ideas off of. And he's got a great network. There's just a lot of people there, athletes, philanthropists, people like me who have a startup and big sports fans. And then I have the Win Again Academy with Marc Moyer, which is another great networking group. He does events with athletes and again, philanthropists. The two of those places, those networking are probably maybe a third of all the guests that come on my Wolf Den show, people that I met through that. And so it's been the best networking that I've been a part of. I did a few networking events that I tried to invite my group to, and we might be doing some more. So stay tuned for that. But it's just great, networking. You're going to meet some great people. Mark says in the email and the tagline, like, you'll meet at least one person who will impact your network. And sometimes that's all it takes is one. And, the locker room has been great. Ryan Nurse, I'll tell you, Ryan Nurse was a guest on my show, and I don't want to give too much away, but he had a real traumatic experience, and he just has a really great view, motivating, sad, funny. He's called I just forgot it. I forgot what he calls himself, but check out my podcast. Or check out Ryan Nurse. He's great. And Nancy Barrows was on our show, and she has just an incredible story of perseverance. She was abused as a child. So it's not all, it's people sharing their story. It's people sharing what they're passionate about. I think we need to elevate these people whose story they don't know. Everyone knows about the same stories, and I don't want to dismiss any of their stories, but everyone knows about some of these, the same people whose stories are being shown, whether it's ESPN or it's online or they're the influencers. So I think there's a new voice that needs to be raised, and I'm happy to give people that platform, and I hope one day that my voice will be raised, because I'm always championing for things that I think are important in society and on the right side of history, and just trying to help people. So that's really what the Wolf Den is about, and I've really enjoyed doing it. It's a casual conversation, and it's just, I welcome you to check it out, and welcome anyone who wants to share their story to reach out, and we'll book. We are booked until August now, but we'll get you on there.
Sounds good. Nikki, how important do you think it is to have a hook as a motivational speaker? I was just, as Matt was talking about some of the people that he's dealt with, and Nancy definitely, it's a very sad story how she went through that abuse, but it is part of what she draws people into her conversations. But then even during the Black Business Expo, we saw some people that had some, I would call them unusual hooks. I remember there was the young lady that comes on with the pom-poms and all of that, and definitely gets people motivated with her pom-poms and some of her background. And there was also the gentleman from yesterday that literally found success stories from Dr. Seuss, and he built a whole speech around his Dr. Seuss and green eggs and ham. So he was definitely breathing that to bring some business success to the adult business world. So he's not even talking about young entrepreneurs, but he was finding some very poignant business lessons to learn from, of all things, green eggs and ham.
Definitely. I think it's super important to have a hook, because we are in a time and an age right now where there are so many things fighting for our attention. So many social media apps, the news. We can get distracted by our emails. We probably have more than one email, and we have all these tabs open on our computer and all these tabs open up in our brain. There's so many things fighting for our attention right now that the hook is important, at least to get people to stop and to hear you out, And once you get them to stop and hear you out, and then you can honestly continue to bring that information that you're trying to put off that may not have hooked them in the beginning. So I think a hook is very important to start out with, to get someone's attention, to say, hey, okay, let me maybe hear what she has to say first, especially when people prejudge you when they see you, and think maybe they, don't have the time to hear what you say, or maybe don't want to hear what you say, until you start bringing them in with that hook. So I think a hook is very important.
I definitely agree with you on that. Even Jesse, in terms of the marketing of the bourbon and everything, what kind of like hooks other than the Durham hook? Of course, all of Durham folks love that, but that's not going to sell it in, say, Ohio, or sell it in New Zealand. So, what are y'all using as hooks to get folks reeled in those other places? Because, like I said, definitely anybody that's from Durham, North Carolina, is going to want to go because we know the history of Hillside and its rich history. But how are you going to get the person that's, say, in Ohio, or the person that's in California, or the person that's in Australia to even care about this new brand of bourbon?
Absolutely, Mark. So Old Hillside is a lifestyle. It's just the school that we went to, but it's a lifestyle. And when we say that, we actually got together from coming together, and meeting up every year at the horse races here in Kentucky. So it's a lifestyle. It's more of all the family coming back together, all your family in a family reunion, ain't seen each other in years, and y'all laughing and joking, and you have a bottle of Old Hillside bourbon on the table, just laughing and having fun, bringing back that nostalgia of hey, when we used to argue and fight in middle school and and stuff like that. That's the experience we want to bring back, not the fighting per se, but the camaraderie, the friendship. And I think that lifestyle is everywhere. People in New Zealand is doing it. People in Australia is doing it, everywhere. So that lifestyle is what we try to incorporate through our brand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that lifestyle is important. Just coming back to Kentucky and everything, we just had the Kentucky Derby. I don't think I've interviewed you since that time, and of course, there was that major controversy that went on. So how are folks in Kentucky dealing with that? Because you had a horse that won, and then he lost because apparently he was on drugs, and definitely all kinds of other things were going on. And now I learned that, and this was like a couple of months ago, I learned that the betting world is apparently having to pay out twice, because apparently the horse that won and was the cheating horse, they still have to pay. They still paid out that winner, and now they've got to pay out the winner of the horse that actually won. So it sounds like there's a whole lot of things going on in that regard. So what are you hearing over there in Kentucky?
So it's been several people who presented tickets where they would have had a bet called the superfecta, and the superfecta is when you pick 1, 2, 3, 4 in the order. Hey, so one guy literally had a superfecta. He had $100 superfecta. So you're talking about $100 times, I think the payout was like $14,000. So he's a little upset right now. But but there's a gentleman who won the superfecta who's very happy. So it's really the side of the fence that you're on. Bob Baffert would probably never ever get a job in Kentucky again. But we are passionate about our horses here in Kentucky.
So Courtney and Brian, I know that he became passionate about horses, and y'all always had this love, apparently, of bourbon even growing up. But did he convert you to horse racing? Because one of the things that I told him was that I remember, and this was the last time that Jesse was on, maybe the time before, that I remember growing up and being a fan of Hunter S. Thompson, because I've always been interested in journalism, and Hunter S. Thompson was the one that they called the gonzo journalist. So he would sometimes go in and absorb himself into the environment. So like he did Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, so he got to experience some of that Las Vegas like living and everything. And he also did Fear and Loathing at the Kentucky Derby, because he found the Kentucky Derby to be this truly interesting event and truly a pageant. So speaking of like what Maya was talking about and what she's competing in, definitely a pageant in that regard, with the people dressing up in their hats and the whole liquor and everything else flowing through. So were you always into horses? Because I know y'all shared the love of bourbon even in high school, or definitely as young adults, maybe in college, but converted you to the horse world.
No, I'm interested in the dressing up part, the Kentucky Derby part, like putting on the seersucker suit, and that entertainment part of it. But the horse racing, I mean, it's cool. I'm a sports fan, but I'm not necessarily into the horse racing per se. But yeah, I'm also in the culture. I'm into the culture, into the the spirit of it. I think that's for me. That's my interest.
What about you, Brian?
Yes, I had been going to the Derby a couple of years prior to taking Jesse actually with me. I had gone on bourbon tours, and he happened to post a picture that I recognized from Lexington, and I was like, "Are you in Lexington?" And so, I said, "Man, look, you got to go to the horse races. It's incredible." I mean, so my fervor for it was my introduction to bringing him in, and so it's been every year all we talk about is like we're going. So my father was into horse racing, so I kind of watched it, never understood it until I became an adult.
Yeah, because one of the things that people forget, and I know me and Jesse had brought it up the last time, was the history of African Americans in horse racing, because we were actually the leading jockeys in the early days and everything. But people forget that because they see a lot of our Latin brothers and running the horses now or being the jockeys. But it was actually the early horse jockeys were mostly from the African American society, what I understand, and even some of the first winners. So if y'all could share a little bit about that for our listeners that might have missed the last episode.
Sure. A good part of our brand is around the African American jockeys. Isaac Murphy, arguably the best jockey ever, and probably only half of this call has ever heard of the guy. It was two 16-year-olds who won the Derby back in the late 1800s. 16-year-old African American kids who won the Kentucky Derby. I mean, it's unreal. And a good part of our brand is telling that story. So, hey, we're going to tell that story through a special bottle release. And that story has to be heard. So, very, very informative. And we're actually working on a documentary trying to get that story out there as well. But if you guys haven't heard, look up the story of Isaac Murphy. Amazing human being for one. And just phenomenal jockey.
Yes, and we're also partnering with the African American Museum in Kentucky. They're going to help us with promoting the Black jockeys and the history of it, as well as we're working with persons who have been involved with the setup of monuments for the jockeys and horses. So in the coming months, you'll see a lot from us rolling out about the Black jockeys and the horse racing and how the ladies and the guys are involved into, at what levels they were involved in the early days of horse racing.
Well, that'll be amazing, everything. Nikki, is that something that you've ever thought about going to, is checking out one of the horse races, or even I'll ask Matt that same question, or is there another sports event that is like your dream event? Because like I said, I've definitely wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby or one of the other horse races, but I've also been a big track fan, so I wanted to go to the Olympics and haven't made that yet, and the World Cup in terms of soccer. And there are a number of other events, including the NBA Finals, which I've got to get to, or an NFL Super Bowl. But what about yourself? Have you ever thought about going and checking out the horse races, or is that not even something that has interested you at all?
Definitely. I've always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby. I don't know if it was for the horses or to wear a fancy hat. That always attracted me, right? My daughter is an equestrian. She's been riding horses, my goodness, 7-8 years. We actually have 2 miniature horses. But, I live next door, of course, Ohio, Kentucky, mostly all my life, but never had a chance to make it to the race. And it's something I still desire to do and still want to do. So definitely interested, and looks like I'm behind the time and I better get to a race.
What about you, Matt? Is that something you've wanted to do, or is there other sporting events that are on your dream list? But what about yourself, Matt? Have you wanted to make it to the Kentucky Derby?
I think the Kentucky Derby is on my bucket list. My birthday is May 2nd, which is basically always around the Kentucky Derby. And we generally go to Key West for my birthday weekend and always make sure that we're watching the Derby on that Saturday. So I'm excited to someday go there. Hopefully, I have a twin brother. Hopefully we'll get to go together. But I would say Kentucky Derby is, up there with the Masters, as some of the Olympics too, like you mentioned. Those are definitely bucket lists. And I hope to work with the Kentucky Derby. We can create some really cool stuff. I've reached out to them and hope to be able to talk to them at some point. But definitely opportunity for race fans.
Oh yeah, definitely. That would be a great opportunity. I actually had a friend that was actually one of the fellow organizers for the Black Business Olympics, and they were talking about the fact, Kimberly McLean, I think it was, but she runs one of the advertising agencies. But I think it was her birthday. I don't think it was the anniversary. I think it was the birthday, and her husband came out to brought some of her tennis playing friends and everything, and gifted her with tickets to the U.S. Open. So I think she's off to the U.S. Open on this particular week because that happened this past weekend that she got gifted with U.S. Open tickets and all of that. So like I said, if somebody wants to gift anybody on the panel with sports tickets, I don't think anybody here will complain. At least that's what I'm hearing. That if there's folks that want to gift folks with tickets, we would gladly take them, except for maybe not Courtney. Courtney works for ESPN. He can get whatever he feels like, whenever he feels like it, since he's got the sports hookups on the regular and all of that.
That is not true, Mark. It's not true.
The Derby
you have to work in those events, and
it's true. It's true. True. You look at his Instagram. It's true.
The Kentucky Derby had there was a party zone that was sponsored. It was in conjunction with White Claw. So, and I know I sent you guys some stuff, but hopefully you guys someday will be associated with your bourbon and the Kentucky Derby. They're always looking for people that I would think that would be a good fit. But more than White Claw, though I heard it gets a little rowdy there, so maybe White Claw isn't bad.
Yeah, so, I'm sure that they would be down for that and everything. But Courtney, I do have to tease you about that because I know when I've done events, and I've done festivals and everything, everybody thinks that we get to enjoy the event, but I do know what you're talking about because a lot of times you're working the event. Because I know that even doing the blues festival and some other music festivals, folks will come up afterwards and they'll be like, "Mark, did you see such and such?" And I'll be like, "No, at that time I was taking the artist to get paid, so I totally missed what was going on." So I'm imagining that you've had those same kind of experiences where folks are telling you about amazing plays that are going on say a Super Bowl game or an NBA game, and you're sitting there going like, "Nope, missed it. I was doing another shot at another place."
Exactly. I mean, sometimes I wouldn't even know who won the game because I'm so busy, during the process. So you're working, man. I'm there, but I'm not really there as a fan, So it's tough, man.
Yeah, I'm sure it's tough, but I don't think that Jesse or Brian are quite buying this because they're looking at you like, "We want your job. We want to do what you're doing." And I don't think they're quite buying that you're not having at least some enjoyment and at least knowing some of the things that are going on and that you get to hang out with the athletes. So am I right, Jesse? Y'all are not buying his argument?
No. Hey, Mark, I'm watching ESPN and I see Courtney on ESPN holding a cup of coffee for one of the announcers. I'm like, this dude talking about his job. It's an amazing job. And he's just downplaying it. So
Dickie, getting off the sports teasing and everything, but in terms of bourbon, and I'm gonna ask Matt the same thing. They've got this tremendous bourbon. I'm still waiting for my bottle that Jesse has not sent me yet, but I'm still waiting for it and everything. But is that something that you have been a fan of, or are you more of a wine drinker or one of the other alcohols, or do you just try to stay away from the spirits altogether? Because I also know that a good friend of ours does a show here on the network that deals with a wine called Shoe Crazy. So it was actually started by by a young lady who was actually retiring from corporate America after being in an accident. So her and her daughter started the Shoe Crazy brand because they realized that they loved wine and she loved shoes. And I think her daughter did as well. So they started the Shoe Crazy wine brand based out of Virginia.
Definitely, of course, occasional wine drinker here and there. It's probably been a few years since, but I didn't always stay away from the spirits. But I have to say, of course, being a military police officer, I was not a big bourbon drinker at all. But definitely not something that I wouldn't try. But I'm definitely not a big bourbon drinker, and right now, for the most part, I do kind of just stay away. Not something that I do anymore.
Before I get to Matt, and I want to find out what he's got to say about bourbon and everything, I did want to jump on something that you just mentioned, and it does come back to another issue and everything. You said that you were in the MPs, and I know that, we definitely had the Black Lives Matter movement, but we also had people that were trying to talk about the police force and the need for the police force. And there's even here in Durham, we've had the defund movement. But sometimes when people bring that up, they talk about the fact that some of our current police officers came from the military. And sometimes they wonder if the two kind of policing don't necessarily translate, because sometimes you may not have the same skill sets that you might need for the civilians that you need for military. But I'm just wondering your thoughts on that and your thoughts on the direction that we're going with policing in the United States with that military policing background.
And Mark, I got to cut you off real quick. I got to run. I'm not a bourbon drinker, but I do like flavored whiskey, the Screwball peanut butter whiskey. It was pretty good. I had it at my wedding, but I know a lot of people who do like bourbon. So I look
Cool.
forward
And man, before you get off, and I know you got to pop off, but I was going to give you the Maya question, and it looks like Brian bounced off before I could get to him. But that question was, and before I get to Nikki's answer, how any words of encouragement that you would give to our global audience and words of positivity?
I think just do it. Just do it. Do what you want to do. Do what makes you happy, and fight through the naysayers and the roadblocks. And I think if you surround yourself with good people and do the right things, that good things will happen. I feel strongly about that for myself, but I find strongly about that for everyone. And I'm here to help. I'm about as accessible a person as you'll ever meet. You can find me on LinkedIn and all of social media. So reach out if I can help. Reach out if you think that you know someone I should be speaking with. And I look forward to seeing everyone here and hearing from people in the audience. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate you, Matt. Definitely know that, like I've told Brian and Tim and others when they've been back on, you're always welcome to jump back on other conversations. As a matter of fact, Jesse's been on, I think, about 3 times. So he knows that I will definitely invite you back, and you can always come back on whenever available.
Yeah, this is great. I've already connected with a bunch of people today, and I'm looking forward to following up. So
sounds good.
Have a great week. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, peace. So, Nikki, that question I was asking about that whole translating the military police job into the mainstream job, because that has been a complaint that I've heard about sometimes, people saying about the civilian police, even when they've talked about defund police. And I actually think that that's a misnomer, because I think most of the times when people are saying that, they're just saying that they want to kind of channel some of the resources. They don't necessarily want all the money to go away from policing, because I think most people do think that we need some form of policing in one form or fashion or another.
Definitely. So I think it comes down to, just like with any local police officer, it depends on the city you're in. You know, the Chicago police officer is going to have way more experience and deal with way more situations than maybe a little, town police officer will have. So, and when it comes to a combat veteran, I've seen things and, have experienced things and been in situations that local police officers wouldn't even think about they'd ever be in. So right. I don't think that it's a point that just because maybe it's a military police officer or military, that certain military officers don't have that experience. It just depends on where you've been stationed per se, or where your precinct is per se. Because once again, everybody's experience is different. But when it comes down to the core values, being trained the same and being able to, be trained to deal with situations on the street, I think we're all definitely qualified to do so.
Yeah, because I know the only time that I've really seen it come up in conversations is sometimes when people talk about some of the military equipment that police officers that were not trained in the military have received as well. So I know that that's the other part of the conversation that comes up, is that sometimes people are sitting there going like, it's one thing for a local police officer to get, say, some of the tanks or some of the other things that they may use to quell riots. It's another thing for them to actually have the training in it. And sometimes I do think that lacks sometimes as well. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
And definitely, I also think too, of course, being a military police officer, we also have, I think, I wouldn't say a lot more, but we know how to deal with situations in terms of maybe bento situations where maybe a soldier's acting out because of a panic attack or PTSD attack, that maybe a local police officer wouldn't have that training to do as well. So I just really think, no matter where you're at, everyone's experience is going to be different. But that's why it's so important for us to all work together and everybody lean on each other's experiences and strengths and weaknesses, because no matter what precinct or district you're in, everybody has them.
No, and the other thing that I would agree, and I think Courtney would probably even agree, and I'd love to hear from Jesse as well, is that I think that most people would agree, and I know the guy that I do my audio podcast with is a prison guard, and he talks about the fact that even in the prison system, they know that they have bad apples, and what they would like to do is just see the bad apples be taken out of that organization, whether it's the police force, whether it's the prison guards or whatever. So it's not that all police are bad, but there are bad apples in anything, just like I'm sure there are bad apples in corporate America that Jesse is part of. And there's probably even some bad apples, not many, because I can't think of who they would be in the ESPN world and all of that. But I'm sure there's some folks over there that even Courtney sitting there going like, nope, I don't really like their style and they need to leave and everything. But there are probably bad apples in all organizations. And it's just a matter of trying to make sure that they don't influence the organization too much would be my attitude. And if they're really toxic bad apples, that we need to find ways to get them out.
Yeah. And Mark, I say it's malpractice. So
Right.
So that's what people don't. If a doctor, if he screws up, I've never heard. I'm never going to the doctor again. It's malpractice on any level. So these bad apples are committing malpractice, and not everybody does that. So you can't link everybody to malpractice.
Yeah, I would agree with
Exactly.
that.
I think
What are your thoughts, Courtney?
it's an accountability piece. You know, we have to hold folks accountable for their actions. You know, if they're not doing something up to par, then we have to hold them accountable. And I think with any company, with any business, you have to operate that way. And there needs to be some accountability if you're not doing what you need to be doing. So
I
that's my
definitely agree
thought.
with you. And what are your thoughts about accountability, Nikki? Because like I said, you did have that experience and that long experience. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I was also a corrections officer at the county jail in the booking department. And going back to experience, once again, the experience that I had in the booking department and the things I dealt with there, the same correction officer on the 4th, 5th floor didn't have that experience because they didn't deal with the things that I dealt with too. So whether it's corrections officer in the prison system, in the jails, policing, we do have to hold each other accountable, because at that time we are representing our unit, we're representing our department, we're representing our city, so we have to hold each other accountable. And even if that means being that person that pulls that other person aside, like, hey, that's not okay. That's not what we're about, or you got to do this or got to do that. Yeah, it's tough sometimes being a person of color, being a female. It's tough sometimes doing that because, you do feel like maybe you'll get fired, or you do feel after that you'll get backlash or get differently. So it's a tough call and a tough decision sometimes to make. I think, like Brian said, it's tough. We say we're going to do this, but when the time comes, will we really be that person to approach someone that needs to be held accountable? It's a tough call, but we all have to do it.
No, I definitely agree with you. One of the sponsors of the Black Business Olympics was a gentleman by the name of Bruce George, and he created this movement called Genius is Common. And basically what he was saying is that we all have a genius in us in one form or fashion or another. But I remember his interview, which I believe was on Saturday and everything. He was talking about the fact that oftentimes we don't, we had things in our lives that were similar to what our kids are doing. Like we get on them for their hangy pants and things of that nature. But we also had things that were looked at by our generation as being things that were not all that cool as well. I know folks that grew up in the 70s, they were probably teased for having platform shoes and things of that nature. That growing up in the 90s probably had like some of the t-shirts and all of that. So I just wondering, y'all's message, two-part question is, one, y'all's thoughts about that, the fact that we don't need to be like discarding our youth if they're having some habits that might be based on the way that what's cool in their generation. And also, I do love his whole movement and this concept that we are all geniuses in one form or fashion. We may not be super geniuses in terms of the brain and the Mensa ability, but we've got skills, whether that's a sports skill or a talent like Maya might have with singing, or whether that's the ability to write a book, or even the ability to cook, or some of the various other things that we might be good in. I remember one of the people that did one of the commercials was actually a master barber, and I think he was in Oklahoma. So we've all got these certain skills, and that's what we need to be honoring. But I'd love to hear both your thoughts about how we're treating our youth and that concept of genius is common.
So my son, he's a recent college graduate, and me, Courtney, Brian, and the rest of the team actually was in Atlanta this weekend, and my son is part of the executive team. So he's actually the face, the CEO, and and Courtney, it was Courtney's birthday, so we decided to go to a few places that we like to hang out, and And he said to me, like, man, y'all really do it differently. And he was just impressed with how we moved. So he was saying we're not too different, but we can't always point the fingers at them because Courtney and I both had funny haircuts when we were in school together. We wore baggy pants. We wore, I look at my basketball uniforms. I wore socks to my knees. And I'm like, why did you wear socks to your knees? That's the dumbest thing. But, I look at him, his pants are a lot tighter than mine, and I don't knock him for it. But I have to tell him, like, I did some stuff too, dude. So don't, sharing those memories and having friends that can back me up is amazing. So
no, we all do stuff. I did not have the pleasure. Like I said, I've known Doc for years when we were in school and everything, and his roommate and my roommate were best friends. I was following Doc Rivers' career and everything, and I remember that even though they're divorced, but the woman that he was married to for decades and everything, the one that gave him the kids, including Austin Rivers and all of that, that when they first got married, Doc actually came and did the wedding in his tennis shoes. So if you actually go back and watch the old pictures of the weddings, the entire groom party, if I remember correctly, is in their tennis shoes because they were all NBA basketball players and everything. So like I said, when I see stories like that, I'm like, okay, yeah, we can't really say that much. Courtney, what about you and your thoughts? And do you have any kid stories as well? And I'm not sure if you've got any kids of your own or if you've got any thoughts about how similar we are in some ways.
No, I mean, we can't knock this generation, man, because like their sense of style and their things that they do, it works for them. It works for them. And like Jesse mentioned, man, we had things that we used to do, big baggy clothes and things that probably wouldn't fly in this day and age. And this generation has figured out how to monetize a lot of things. When if you think about the influencers, the things that they're doing online, I mean, their genius is something that I think we haven't experienced in our generation as far as their technical abilities and their ability to monetize just the simplest thing, right? And like the fads and things like that are catching on so fast that I can't knock it. I really can't, because I mean, if we would have had those like the internet influencers and things back in high school and junior high school, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, right? It's like we'd have taken off and done so much. But I can't knock these kids today. They're smart, and the way that they're doing things are different. But I can't. It's good stuff.
Definitely agree with you on that. What about your thoughts, Nikki, on that? I'm sure with a teenage daughter, you're probably thinking that there's some things that she's doing that you're sitting there going like, yep, I was doing something similar and might have even had some similar kind of outfits and everything. So I really can't complain about what you're doing because I was doing something similar some 30 or 40 years ago.
Exactly. And the tough part is, of course, watching your children go and grow into their own and becoming a teenager. And it's like, I'm not ready for the short shorts. But then a memory comes in my mind. Oh, I had some short cross-color shorts when they first came out. I had one pair that I was allowed to wear. So I had to remember, I went through the short shorts and I'm like, oh my God, those are too short. She's like, Mom, we were literally in the store right before we came here. And I'm like, I am not ready for this. But, as you said, the things that they're doing and wearing and what they want to wear, I remember back to what I was wearing. And it's just like, okay, if I made it and I survived, she will be okay. So I try to relax a little bit and, let her come into her own. But you're right. We had some funny things back in the day and they have some funny things. And, it's all about letting them come into their own. But I am not ready for this. I tell you that.
And Nikki, I was trying to do the math on your age, but you said cross colors. And so me and Tuck eyes got this big. So I'm not going to tell your age, but I know how old you are.
Yes, I gave it away. Cross colors. I gave it away.
Cross colors definitely gave it away. So yeah, and I do remember I actually had a friend that worked for the Cross Colors brand and everything, and they actually went to NC State, and were involved with them in their early days. So definitely much shout out to them, because I remember I was actually working at a newspaper as a young reporter at the time when that brand came out. So yeah, you did date yourself with that whole thing.
Like I've been home from Iraq 18 years. So I know I really dated myself then.
Well, I was in there in 99, 2000. So we're about in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force. Were you in the Air Force too?
Oh, Army all the way.
Okay. You said Ohio. I automatically defaulted to Wright Pat. So that's what I thought you were.
Yeah, Army.
Oh, okay.
No, but definitely. One of the things I've been proud about this young generation, I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about this is probably one of the most active generations. Some people might say the 60s, and yes, I think that they can probably be put in that same category, but I'm actually in between being born in the 62 and everything. But definitely, I'm thinking of this generation, because the folks that were in the 60s would have been born in like the 40s and the 50s. But this generation is probably the most active and most inclusive generation that I've ever seen, and is not afraid to let you know what they think about various issues. And I think that they're very liberal on a lot of issues, ranging from Black Lives Matter to wanting to have the Dreamers have their rights, to even wanting this be in Pride Month, the LGBTI and whatever other letters they've got now, community have their rights as well. So it definitely seems that they are one of the most active communities that I've seen. But I'd love to know your thoughts, because they are not afraid to let us know what they think. And sometimes they think that have lost our minds by not being as liberal as they are. And I consider myself fairly liberal, but they might even be more liberal.
Yeah. We had the opportunity to do an event this weekend, and I keep talking about it, but we hired a videographer to cover it. And this lady, she's ex-military, a young girl, maybe 24, 25. And she just wanted to talk to us and understand how we thought. She was sponging everything that we said, how to move, how to get your business right. She was just listening and just taking notes. So I think from that perspective, a lot of them want to be different, and they want to learn from us. In my generation, if you try to have a conversation with me, I'm walking off, because I don't really, I'm not thinking about the future. But her whole thing was like, man, how you guys move, how you come together, tell me your story. How do you trust Courtney? How do you know you can trust Courtney? And it was just, she was learning from us, and I was just blown away by this young lady. And she is going to be on the come up. She's an amazing talent. And she really listens, and she wants to get better. Hey, so all the stigmas that may be under this generation, there's some out there that are thirsty for knowledge, and they want to learn from us. And we got to make ourselves available and give them whatever we didn't get. So,
what about your thoughts, Courtney?
I agree. Jesse, like it's key that we just make ourselves available. And the knowledge that we have, the things that we've gone through over our growing up in our generation, we have a lot to offer, and in terms of knowledge and just the basic, skills and things like that. And so just being available, being present, a lot of those kids will pick it up and again latch on to it, and they're very smart. They're super smart, but they want it like right now. Right. And it's like, that's like the now, I've hired some young kids, man, just coming out of college, and they want $70,000-$80,000 right off the bat. I'm like, well, no, let's back up a little bit. You have to get some experience first, right? Right. You can't just get that out of college. But they want it like right away. And I mean, I love that about them, but like, I would love to kind of bring them back in a little bit and say, hey, this is kind of how you do it. Right. And not saying that's the right way to do it, right? Because there's multiple ways to skin a cat, right? But it's just, they just have to get that basic foundation put down first, and then they can just take off. But that's what I've learned about this generation.
And Nikki, along those same lines, this generation, and maybe it's just my assessment of it, but it seems to be one of the most entrepreneurial generations that I've seen as well. Maybe the most entrepreneurial since the Renaissance. And when I'm thinking of the Renaissance, I'm thinking about like when we had Black Wall Street and things of that nature. Because every time I turn around, and it even comes back to something that Courtney's talking about, they're like, starting businesses in college, in high school, and sometimes they're not even thinking about going to corporate America. They're like, I want to be able to have my entrepreneurship business up and running and making my money, and not even wanting to go into corporate America. But I was just wondering your thoughts about that.
You're right. Great question. My daughter already has her business and up and running and making money, and put her website together in one day. And I'm like, I'm still waiting on my IT guy to call me back. But she put her website together, and she's had 2 or 3 businesses since this business. they have so much access to technology and the internet that we didn't have growing up. So you're right. She already knows what she wants to be. She's already thinking about college. And I'm like, you're only going to the 8th grade and so serious about it. And sometimes she asks, well, can my college, when I apply for college, will they know what I got on my math test? And I'm like, why are you even worried about that? But they know what they want. As Courtney says, they show up and they're like, I want to make this much. I know what I want to do and I'm going for it at all costs. So it has a lot to do with technology that we really weren't thinking about that because we weren't seeing social media every day, all day, or the internet or sitting there researching. We had to pick up an encyclopedia and try to figure this thing out or go to the library and wait for your parents to take you to go to the library. So we weren't even thinking that far ahead because we just didn't have access to the information that this generation has now.
Oh, and the internet has even accessed and changed the way that we're doing a lot of things. I remember growing up in I was in high school in the 70s and definitely college in the early 80s and everything. And I just remember that definitely in high school and even some of the younger ages, there would be teachers that would bring TV sets in to watch the World Series. And I'm not going to lie, I've been probably watching the majority of my NBA playoffs on my laptop. So I've been not necessarily even watching it on my TV. I've been watching it on the computer and things of that nature. So it's definitely a different age, even in the way that we're seeing the sports. Because like I said, I'm thinking that teacher that brought in that TV to watch the baseball game because they were such a baseball fan and TV was in a newer, I won't say totally young because it had been around for at least a decade or two, but it was still in a younger age and everything. They were just glad to be able to bring in, it was a relatively small TV set and, put it on there and basically ignore teaching us that day because they wanted to watch the World Series and all of that. But definitely that was not the case now because right now the teacher can be watching the World Series or any of those afternoon games. And I know a lot of the games are at night now, but if there's sports that are in the afternoon, they can be watching it on their computer while teaching the kids. So the kids don't even have to know that they're watching it unless they just happen to come around, but you don't have to have the big TV set. So I was just wondering if you could talk about even the impact of social media on your work, Courtney, because even, like I said, I've been following and I do watch sometimes the after NBA chats that go on with Ernie Johnson and some of the other folks, and it's always some great conversations that happen there and everything, but definitely I'm watching it usually on my laptop or one of my 2 laptops. So I just wondered if you talk about how the impact of social media and the internet on even sports coverage.
Yeah, I think the landscape is changing. Everything is going to streaming now. Social media is very prevalent and very big, and kind of like just the pre-show, post-show, productions. We even do a lot of stuff that folks don't really know about through the pandemic. We have announcers announcing the games at home, just like we're talking right now. They're announcing the games over the internet, right? And so it's definitely changed and it's growing. And we have to keep up with that from a technology standpoint. We have to keep up with that change, and we have to keep it going. But social media is very, very prevalent.
It was real interesting seeing that, by the way, because I even heard one of the games recently, and the announcer even admitted that because they were like saying that the players were playing. I think it was one of the games before they let fans in, and they were like saying, announcing the play, and they were even letting you know that they were making the comments from. I'm not sure if it was their home studio or their physical home studio, like meaning their home office studio in whatever city they were, or their actual home. But they definitely let you know that they were not in the arena with the players. And I think that was a game that I watched maybe even a week or 2 ago. And I'm sitting there going like, so they're not even at the game. They're actually making the play-by-plays from a whole distant location and everything. And I saw that. And I also saw it with, I remember I'm a fan and have been for a long time, Saturday Night Live. And I saw that when the pandemic first happened, they were doing entire skits from their individual homes and then patching it together and all of that to make Saturday Night Live happen during the pandemic year. And I'm sitting there going like, whoa, this has got to be some serious production if y'all have got, because that's got to be a cast of about at least 40 or 50. And they're spread out all over the country, sending in their little vignettes. And then somebody like a Courtney has to put it together and everything. And I'm sitting there going like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. But it's made TV, I guess, more accessible. Like anybody can, jump in there. And so we do FaceTime hits where we used to do like a full production crew for a live shot. Now you can just get on your iPhone and do a FaceTime hit and be on SportsCenter,
Wow.
And so it's the technology and just because of the pandemic has changed the way we do TV. It's definitely changed the way we do TV for sure.
Yeah, I've got to teach you about something that, like I said, I'm going to wrap it up and get y'all's quotes in terms of words of advice and things of that nature and your social media. And since Jesse and Brian have jumped off, I definitely want to get it for the bourbon and any other ones that you want to give for yourself, Courtney. But before we jump off, I do have to teach you about the art paintings behind you, because none of those look like sports paintings. They look like they're more like cartoons and all of that. So I have to ask you about those, because I'm sitting there going like, I'm expecting a picture of like, some of the basketball players, and I'm seeing like what looks like a portrait and something that looks like a cartoon character. So I'm sitting there going like, I don't necessarily see the sports stuff. So I just wondered if you could tell our audience a little bit about that, because it's been catching my eyes for at least the latter half of the conversation.
No, I'm a huge hip hop fan. So what you see behind me is LL Cool J's record Radio, and then you see EPMD, which is my favorite hip hop group. And then I don't know if you can see the picture right above that is LeBron James and Michael Jordan leaning over Kobe Bryant's jersey. So, okay. So yeah, that's a little sports intertwined with the hip hop background there.
Yeah, because I did not see the LeBron James ones until you adjusted the camera, but I did see the other two and everything. I was going like, that does not look like a sports one and everything. So what do you use to decorate your room, Nikki? I don't see anything. Well, I do see one painting, I think, behind you and everything. But what is your things that you use to relieve yourselves and everything? Because I do think that we have to have relief in life, and there's always stress going on. So I'm a big fan of sometimes even going for a walk and observing nature and the birds and some of the things that are going on. So what are some of your relief techniques that you use, especially being a public speaker, a former military, a military veteran, and definitely all the things that are leading to stress constantly, even minus the pandemic?
Definitely. So I'm not in my office right now. That's why you don't see probably about 50 motivational quotes and things to keep my mind focused on. I have stickies all over the place. I have pictures. I have cutouts, things that I can always constantly read to bring my mind back that what I need to be focused on. Because life still happens. My daughter's still, wearing that crazy stuff and wanting to do her teenage thing. And there's so much stress of life. But because I do motivate and encourage others, I have to make sure that I'm still motivated and encouraging myself. So I'm a big, as Bruce George says, quoteologist. I'm not a quoteologist, but I like to keep quotes around. I like to read them, and lots of motivational, inspirational, positive things to keep my mind set on. So that is what's all over my office right now.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. Well, like I said, I did want to wrap up and definitely want to thank both of y'all for being on. But as I said, I'll start with ladies first. So I'll start with Nikki first and everything. But any social media that you've got that you want to share, and any words of positivity and encouragement that you want to share with our global audience, I'm sure that they would love to hear that from you. And like I've told everybody else, love to have y'all come back on either on this streaming show or one of the other two ones that I do, as well as the audio ones. But it's an open invitation anytime you feel like coming back.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So appreciative for you inviting me and having me today. I enjoyed the conversation. Wonderful guest today. I will definitely be connecting with everyone. You can catch me walking in power and purpose on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Nikki Doherty. And you can also email me at info@nikkidoherty.com. And words of inspiration and encouragement. What I'm doing now, I never thought that I would do on this level. I was comfortable in my government job, but I always had a vision of speaking on a stage to women veterans, sharing my testimony. That vision always stuck with me. And that was about 10 years ago. And we always want to ask how is that going to happen? Or when is that going to happen? I'm in a comfortable position, comfortable job. There's no opportunities like that. And who wants to hear me speak? Who wants to hear me talk, But I always had that vision. So the things that you're seeing, I call them purpose clues that God gives us along our journey. And we shouldn't worry about the how. We just should pursue one step at a time, what's in our heart and what our vision is. I always wanted to help veterans, didn't know it would be a nonprofit. But once that, began to be a dream, just one step forward. So whatever dream you have, no matter how old you are, age doesn't matter. All you need is a belief in yourself to know. And it's so simple as if you put your mind to it, you can do it. but don't worry about that last step. Have a go and reverse engineer it, and just start with the one step, which is believing in yourself. You can start mentioning what you want to do, because although you have to be careful of the dream stealers and the brain drainers, you still have to network. So you will still have to speak your dreams and goals to people that will open those doors for you to let you know that, hey, I am moving in the right direction. But you also have to have tough enough skin to where people start doubting what's inside of you. You have enough belief and encouragement in yourself to keep going. So my word of encouragement is keep going. Do not feel that you have to stay stuck where you're at. Never stop dreaming. Never give up on yourself. Bet on yourself, because you can really do anything you want to do. And getting a coach is necessary. Getting a mentor is necessary. Getting someone or investing in yourself to have someone on your team in the same mindset as you. If you don't have a network of people to bounce ideas off of, you may have to hire someone who, once again, will open doors and start putting you around the people that you need to be around. So I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to continue to network and meet great people. And honestly, I'm excited for people to tap into the purpose and the power that's within them. And I'll leave on this note that we have the power to create the life that we want to live the moment we decide and believe in ourselves.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I definitely agree with you on that and everything. Courtney, if you want to tell folks how they can reach the Old Hillside Bourbon folks, but also if there's ways to reach both you and Brian and Jesse, as well as individuals, and definitely your words of encouragement and your words of support as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're on social media, Old Hillside Bourbon Company, on all social media platforms. Please follow and like our page for more information on product details. Our bottles are coming soon to an area near you. So yeah, just please follow us on all social media platforms for more details on our product. And in terms of just words of encouragement, Nick, you hit it right on the head. You know, you have the power to do whatever you want to do. If you speak it, it will be. The universe will make it happen for you. Positive thinking. Speak positive things, and positive things will come back to you. You know, put one foot forward in front of the other. You know, keep moving, keep going. Never stop, never quit. Because as soon as you stop, that's when your dream stops. Right? Follow your dreams, follow your passions. I'm a young guy from Durham, North Carolina. I live in Los Angeles. I never would have thought that I would be on the West Coast, right? From a little small town. But like I never quit. I never said, hey, you know, this is all I want to do. I knew I wanted to do greater things and be great. And I just put one foot in front of the other, and I kept moving. I kept going. I had 1,000 no's, 1,000,000 no's, right? People are gonna say no left and right, but that one yes is all that matters. And once you get that one yes, you're there. And then once you get there, you have to sustain this. Sustain it. You have to do what you worked hard for to get there. You have to put that into practice, you know. So never give up, never quit. Anything is possible. Anything you speak, positive speaking, positive thinking. Everything you put out there has to be positive, right? You can't say anything negative, because those negative things will come back to you. So speak positive. There's power in the tongue. Keep it going.
Yeah, definitely. Along those same lines, and just a quick interjection, I'd love to hear from your thoughts on this, Courtney, and everything. But one of the things that I oftentimes hear from our athletes and our entertainers, and I oftentimes work with both groups, more the entertainers than the athletes, is the fact that they all want to make it to the big time. And we do know that there's a limited amount of folks that actually get into the NBA or the NFL or a number of the other leagues, including some leagues that aren't as major here in the United States, like soccer is major in other parts of the world, but it's not as major here. But we do have Major League Soccer and even Major League Baseball. So when you talk to youth, even out there in Los Angeles, how much realism do you have to give them, and how do you have to balance that job of wanting to encourage them to go for their dream of being athletes, but also let them know that it's a long shot dream? Because I know that I sometimes have to have that balancing act, even with some of my entertainer friends, and some of them are even long in the tooth because they've been in the entertainment game for a while and they still haven't made it to the kind level that they would like to be at, and things along those lines. So how do you do that balancing act of, telling folks that they should pursue that dream of being, say, the next LeBron, because, LeBron was the one that came after Michael. And so he was the next Michael. And now there'll be the next, whatever that one is after that, the next LeBron, whoever that is. But I was just wondering how you balance that thing of wanting to tell them to pursue the dream, but also giving them some realism and reality checks, because sometimes we also have to give our folks reality checks.
Mark, I think you hit it right on the head. You do have to be real, and it's a small group of people who really make it right out. The LeBrons and the Kobe's and the Jordans. It's a small group that get to that level of achievement. They get to that level of greatness, and I think you have to really be focused. Have tons of discipline. You have to be that Mamba mentality, right? They talk about Kobe had that Mamba mentality, but that's something special that he had, and only a select few have that Mamba mentality, right? So, you have to be realistic in your talents. You have to be realistic in your growth and the things that you're doing to get to that next level. You can get there, but it takes time, it takes practice, it takes hard work, it takes determination, and it takes believing in yourself. And again, people are going to knock you. People are going to say, oh, no, you can't do this. You can't do that. But you have to believe within your heart and your soul and everything in you. And you have to project that every day. And that's how you get to that next level. That's how you get to that point where you can say, hey, I'm here. I've made it. Right. And so I'm not at that point yet. I'm still going, and I've achieved a lot in my life, but that's not it. I still want to get to that next level. I still want to get to that next point, right? That's that Mamba mentality. Like you can't be, you can't rest on what you've accomplished. You have to want more. You have to search for more. You have to dive deep into yourself, right? And every being, your blood, your sweat, your tears, everything has to come out and to reach to where you want to be. So I encourage everyone, you can get there, but it's going to take some work. It's going to take some work. It's going to take blood, sweat, and tears to get there, right? And it's not easy. It's not easy. You're going to get told no, and that's okay. But that one yes, that's all you're looking for, is that one yes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. And Nick, I do have one last question for you as well, and it was actually one that involves the military, because I know one of the things that I used to love, and like I said, I'd never served, but I did have friends that were in the military. But one of the things I loved about it was that they were always telling you that part of the marketing tool was that you had to travel the world. And that's definitely a great marketing tool, because you do get to see the world and everything. But, I've always been a big fan of John Lennon and Imagine, and even some of Michael Jackson's songs. So I've always had this dream of kind of like even some of the things that exist in the Bible, of this kind of like world that existed, that we didn't necessarily need the military, not just the U.S. military, but even the Israeli military or the various other militaries that exist. And I know that that's not a realistic goal, because we're humans and everything. But I was just wondering if you could talk to those that are having more of that peaceful mindset, that they would like to have that world that we don't necessarily need a military, and if that even possible to have exist in your mind, because I know that you're also a woman of faith, but it does seem like the military is needed, but we hope that it isn't at some point.
Yeah, definitely a tough decision. I definitely do think that the military is needed, of course, because, we have different religions, and some religions think differently. Some religions believe in literally, dying for what they believe in, and literally, bringing others with them. And we do need protection. I'm just trying to be so careful in what I say here, but we do need protection from that on a higher scale than just our local police officers and just our local service members. We need people that will go in literally undercover in those war zones. We need our Delta Force. We need our our Green Berets. We need those people that are willing to go into those situations in order to get us information to protect us. So I don't think the military is going anywhere. In fact, we just created the Space Force. So now we need Space Force. We need a military in space. And it's like, how crazy is that? But with everything that we just discussed today with IT, we need those specialized services to be trained on a government level to be able to go places where, you know, the average person may not be, and be able to go and get training. And when we talk about travel in the world, you know, being in Iraq and literally being in places when I read the Bible to say, oh my God, little old me from Ohio was there. I was in Baghdad. I was in old Mesopotamia, which is old Persia, of course, where the kings and queens were, where Esther was. You know, my foot touched the same sand that Abraham walked on. And I'm like, wait a minute, what, little old me? So, you know, you do get to travel the world. I definitely even turned down some opportunities to go places. But, you know, I don't think without the military in terms of travel wise, I would not have gone the places that I was able to go. But the military is definitely here to stay. And as the world keeps evolving, I don't know what we're going to come up with next after Space Force, but I'm sure there's something else even after that.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. And, you know, it's even interesting thinking about the military because, you know, I'm thinking about like what's been going on in Israel and, of course, South Africa back in the day. So as I've said on one of my other friends' shows and everything, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. So sometimes it's even interesting to see how that goes on because sometimes we might even support somebody because we feel that they're on our side. And then it turns out that we don't support them later. I'm thinking about people like Noriega and even some of the folks in the Middle East. So it's just interesting when you have that kind of contrast that goes on with our world politics as well. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that, Nikki.
Yeah, definitely true. And, you know, as I said, as we just keep evolving, you know, you just never know what's really in somebody's mind. You know, you just never know, you know, are they, you know, a friend? Are they a foe? You know, like you said, even Saddam Hussein actually trained at Fort Bragg, you know, many years, you know, before, you know, what happened, we all know, you know, so you just never know, you know, one moment a friend, one moment a foe. So I think that's once again why we need the military, because we need that that inside intel to where the average person, you have to have certain training to be able to go in those environments. So, you know, it's just always interesting to see how things unfold.
Yep, definitely. Courtney, last thing, and then this will be the last thing for everybody is who's going to win the NBA championships? Because we're down to Phoenix just swept Denver, and they just dispatched them like it was nothing. And I forget who's all on the other side of the West. And then we've got Philly up 2-1 on Atlanta, but Trey does have me worried because Trey is very dangerous and everything. And it's 2-2 Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And actually, I've got some ties, Marquette, where Doc Rivers and me went to school, and everything is in Milwaukee. So Marquette's over there in Milwaukee. So I definitely know the Bucks. So definitely it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So I'm not even sure who's going to be in the Final Four minus Phoenix, because we know Phoenix is there because they just dispatched Denver with no problem. So as a sports fan, what can we expect? Who are you expecting to be in the Final Four? And have you got a winner yet for us?
I knew you was going to ask that question, Mark. And I'm rooting for the Suns, man. I'm rooting for Phoenix. Chris Paul, like he's never been here, so he's a hard player, man. He's a special player, and he's coming towards the end of his career too, you know. So I'm rooting for him. I think coming out of the East, I was gonna say the Nets, but with Kyrie Irving down, I'm gonna say the Bucks will probably pull that out, you know. And I think they'll probably come out of the East, to be honest.
So we're looking at Phoenix and Milwaukee is their championship, and you're hoping Phoenix takes the whole thing.
Yep, that's my call. So I don't know if that's gonna happen, but we'll see what happens.
We'll have to see how it goes and everything. So we'll see if that's the way it's going to go, since there's no Ohio teams involved this year. So we'll have to see what they do in terms of football and baseball, because I do know that they've still got those franchises going, because I don't think that even their hockey team is doing anything as well. So we just have to find out in terms of the Ohio folks what's going to go on in terms of baseball and the football. So I don't think the football team did too bad last year. So maybe they'll have a run and everything, but they've got to get past the Baltimore Ravens and some other tight competition in their division, from what I remember.
Right. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yep, definitely have to wait and see. But I do want to thank both of y'all as well as my other guests for being on, and I'm looking forward to having y'all back on in the very near future. And I definitely have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation and look forward to having y'all back on later on. As a matter of fact, I've got to do, because you don't know this, Nikki, but Monday is my crazy day, because it's become even more crazier recently, because you thought that the expo was crazy and that was like a whole week, but on Monday I usually wind up doing 3 podcasts, 2 streaming ones and one that's audio. But then they've also lately had me doing a news program in the morning that I kind of produce, kind of like what I was doing with BBX and everything and all of that. So that's Monday is a 4 streaming day. So I've still got one more to do because I did the news one.
Wow.
And I was actually jealous of the anchor of the news one because usually he's coming at us from his town of Morrisville. This time he was at the beach. I'm going like, wait a minute, you went to the beach to do the news and you didn't bring me. As a producer and an anchor, Courtney will even tell you that's wrong. They're supposed to bring you with them. So, and I'm gonna have to talk to Steve about that and be like, if you go to the beach, you need to bring me along with you. So he's at the beach, and I've done my other 2 streaming shows, ending this one right now, and now get ready to join my good friend Dean Geronimo on the audio one. So I've got a few minutes to catch my breath, grab